normal? Something. Say something. Does that work?
Oh, about the broads.
Keep going. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2. Oh, hey, Colin. Don't these have to be turned on? One, two, three. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Dylan?
Testing. 1,
Dylan?
2, 3.
Dylan?
What's that? You're good? Turn it off?
Behind Dylan.
Okay. Yep. Yep, I do, sir. They were lined up perfectly. So I have everybody. How are you?
Yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying. Yeah, when I first started, I had no idea what else to say.
Put in. Just so people know there are live mics and we're live streaming, so. And you can, like annotate.
We're live streaming right now. We're going to call the, all 5 individual committees will come to order. Each chair has recognized that there is a quorum, and we'll accept that. We're going to, our setup tonight will be, I'll facilitate the evening's events. The chairs are up here. We're going to rotate through the chairs for the questions. Question 1 will start with Don, and then we'll come around, and then we'll do a second loop. There's 10 questions. The candidate will sit up here and answer it, or give us our response. We will have public comment period tonight, but we're going to do a little different than we normally do. So for tonight's meeting, the committees will hold a joint public session. If you wish to speak tonight, please see Liz LaFond, who is up at the back door. She has a sign-up sheet. She's with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and is helping us through this process. We ask you to provide your name and town of residence. In the event that you're not here as a resident, but you're here representing an organization such as a union, just indicate which union it is. This is really more for the person that's going to transcribe everything and take our notes afterwards off the recording. We'll provide those documents to them. The sign-ups to speak will be permitted up until the end of the second candidate's questionings, at which time we'll close sign-ups. So we'll roughly have about 2 hours for people to sign up for public speaking. And again, Liz is up in the back. After each candidate speaks, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back in as we switch things. Earlier, there was a coin toss that was done and witnessed by both Tom and Liz LaFond, and it was decided that the first person to go forward is going to be Vito Perrone. So if Vito can come in now. If you come right down here, the center of the universe. We decided to turn the spotlights off unless you'd like a beam of light on you. No. Okay. All right. So just as a matter of introductions, we'll just start by introducing the folks at the head table.
Don Willard, Chesterfield-Goshen.
I'm Tom Clary, Hampshire Regional.
I'm John Lumbra, Southampton.
Hi, I'm Morley Clary from Westhampton.
I'm Marissa Nye from Williamsburg.
Hello, Marissa.
And the 5 of us represent the 5 chairs of the 5 committees.
Understood.
So first, we'd like to start off by giving you a 3-minute window to introduce yourself and maybe give us a little history or a little whatever you'd like to share with the group.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vito Perrone. I'm a Westhampton resident, 30 years experience in education. My 4 children have gone through Hampshire Regional School District, Westhampton Elementary, through here tomorrow or Friday night. My daughter Audrey is closing the deal for us, and she is moving on to Westfield State, we think. We're very excited about the education that our children received, and I wanted to talk about that tonight because it's significant to what this is all about. My children were prepared and ready for what's next. And the what's next is different for many students that we see in front of us. And for my children, they were ready for what's next. And that's in no small part due to Hampshire Regional and the educators here who prepared them for it. I've been an educator for 30 years. I started my career in Carson City, Nevada, at a high school of 2,400. I was an English teacher. I taught for 13 years. I also taught in the Northern Nevada Correctional Center. I was an administrator at the middle school for a couple years in Carson City, 1,200 students. And, talk about family. My dad had a stroke, so we moved back east, and I was the principal at Westhampton Elementary High School for 6 years, and had a great run there. We took that school from level 3 to level 1, and I could talk a little bit about that later. Moved on to another opportunity in West Springfield. I've been there for 9 years now, first as the high school principal, and then as the assistant superintendent. I served as an interim superintendent for some time. Then we hired Stefania. I attempted to earn a position in Easthampton. I'm sure many of you know how that went. And so it was quite the interesting experience for an educator to go through. But I'm always one to say, what can I learn? How can I move forward in a positive way? And that's what I tried to do. It's what I always try to do. When you think about leadership, it's important for me to remember in my role, in my responsibility, what I'm here to do. And leadership for me is I'm here to help. I'm here to support, and I want to empower teachers, educators, students to grow and move forward in a positive way. And that's what leadership is for me, and that's what I try to model, and those are the things that drive me to be who I am as a leader. When I was a teacher in a classroom, I think about that sphere of influence, right? There's things that we can control and there's things that we can't control in life. And so in the classroom as a teacher, you have a sphere of influence. As a principal, you have a sphere of influence as a school. As a coach, a team. As a assistant superintendent or an interim superintendent, you have a district. And so the leadership that you bring to those spheres of influence drive the people that are the stakeholders forward in a positive way if you're doing it the way it needs to be done. I want you to understand that I am a resident of Westhampton. I've been here for 15 years. My family loves it here. My son, Alex, still lives in Westhampton with us. Two of my children are out of the house. Maya is at Suffolk University. Tyler is in Berlin. But all of them were prepared for what was next by Hampshire Regional. And that is something that my wife, Natasha, and I will always be thankful for. And I am really excited about the opportunity to come here, help you understand who I am, hope that what you see and what you hear makes you think that I could be the person to help lead and grow in a positive way. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that are challenging, that are making people think, well, why would you want to go there with what's happening? There's turnover at the central office that is creating a situation that is not productive and helpful to the educators in this district. And that is something that I am really excited to focus on. How I can help, how I can serve, how I can empower, and help us move forward in a positive way.
Good. Thank you. Now we'll start the series of questions. Don, you have the first one.
Yes. Could you please share with us what you know about our district and why this is the next step for you and your career?
Yes, I could. I know quite a bit about Hampshire Regional, specifically the middle and high school, right? The 7 through 12. I know a lot about Westhampton Elementary School, okay? There's some things that I need to learn about the other elementary schools, the other districts. But what I do know is that the educators in the system, in the different elementary schools, despite the challenges that are faced at the central office level, they have created an atmosphere and a culture where students succeed. They have created an atmosphere and a culture where students persevere, where students are empowered to move forward and be their best selves. You know, I coached football in Easthampton, but with Hampshire, so I learned about a lot of the students that went here. I know many of the families that are part of this community. And my goal, 30 years, right? 15 years in Nevada, 15 years in Massachusetts. I have 6, 7, 8 years left as an educator. This opportunity for me is so very exciting because, Tasha and I drove in the car. It was 7 minutes from my house to this building. And I don't know what you're used to for a leader, whether it's a principal or a superintendent, but the kids are going to know me. They're going to see me. I want to be in the schools. I want to rock and roll at recess and see what happens in the lunchroom and understand what happens in the hallways of the buildings. Because, believe it or not, a superintendent, it's not a fun job. But what is fun is getting to know the kids, getting to know the educators, and being a part of the life of the building, a part of the life of the schools. That's what makes this job worth doing. And that's what gets, I get fired up. I was a coach, so I might get up and start raging a little bit, but it makes me excited to think about the possibility of ending my career in Westhampton at Hampshire Regional, learning about the various districts that compose this place, and understand that we collaboratively can work together to move it in a direction that is positive and that can take us to new heights. That's not a thing that I can do alone. No one can do that alone. It's about collaboration. It's about communication. It's about community. And it's about compassion. And every decision, I guarantee you this, if I get this opportunity, I'll guarantee you this, every decision I make will be made through the lens of what's best for your children. That's what it's about. And that's what gets me fired up about this opportunity to be a leader in Hampshire Regional.
All right, Tom?
Thank you. Could you tell us, what is your experience with developing and implementing educational programs, and how have you worked with teachers and staff to improve student outcomes?
I think I want to look at the second part of that first. The teachers, the educators, are the ones that you need to learn about. You need to know them because they're the lifeblood of the building. Their skills, their talents, their experience is what you need to tap into in order to have an educational program that's successful, right? So we empower teachers. We ask teachers questions about what's going on, what can we do around chronic absenteeism. That is widespread. It's not just Western Mass, it's not just Mass, it's everywhere, right? And so what can we do about chronic absenteeism? And that's not a problem that Vito, as the superintendent, can take on by himself. It's something that we, as a group, a collaborative group, have to get together and solve, right? And it's not in isolation of the schools and the leadership. It's also the parents and the families and the stakeholders. How do we engage students and excite them about learning? Because it's easy to talk about, to kind of frame things in the negative and talk about chronic absenteeism and the fact that there's, 30% of students are chronically absent. But how can we engage them? How can we find out what excites your child and gets them to school every day? What can I do to support you as a parent to make sure that your student is coming to school? And so when I think about the first part of that question, educational programming, what can we do with respect to social emotional learning to make sure that kids feel safe, that kids feel connected in their buildings with their teachers? That they know their principal and their assistant principal. They know the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the director of special services. They're people that help them, that work with them. So my experience working and developing and implementing programs is empowering and making sure I'm collaborating with the stakeholders involved, teachers, educators, parents, community, central leadership, It's a group effort. When I was in East Hampton and we were level 3, I didn't have the solution. I didn't have the answer to how we were going to fix that. That's the old accountability system, right? This is back when I first got here from Nevada. So what do? Well, there were some teachers in the building that had been there, and they're rock stars, right? And they're here too. We have rock stars in this building. I know it because they taught my kids, right? So I went to those teachers and I said, we have a problem with students settling, right? They're settling for the B or the C or on MCAS. They're not putting all their effort into it. What can we do to make sure that students are ready to take on complex tasks? And so what we did was we brought those teachers together and we started talking about how we can flip pedagogy, right, the practices in the classroom to engage kids and make sure that they are willing to persevere through complex tasks. Because that's what they're seeing when they take those tests. But if they don't persevere, they're going to get maybe a 2 instead of a 3. But we want them to get a 4, right? And then how do we meet kids where they are? How do we differentiate instruction in the classroom? Again, I don't have all those answers. But the teachers, when they had time to plan together, when they had time to get in each other's classrooms and check out what Marissa's doing, right, in her classroom, that is best practice, and then spread that best practice, that's what we did in East Hampton. That's how we went from level 3 to level 1. It wasn't because of me and my brilliant ideas, though, Natasha will tell you I have a couple. The reality is, you go to the practitioners and you identify best practice. You give teachers an opportunity to spread that best practice. You engage students and excite them in their learning, and things start to change. That's my experience, at least in East Hampton, doing that. I have other experiences, but I don't know. Is there a time limit?
Yes.
We didn't say that.
Yeah.
John?
No, it's on there. It's 3 minutes.
I'll
3
just
minutes per
go.
question. No.
I'll ramble on. You just let me know. I don't know what the.
You're good.
3 minutes per response. Yes.
Oh boy.
All right.
Okay.
So, next question.
All right. Yeah.
How do you stay up to date on the latest trends, research, advancements, best practices in curriculum and instructions? And then how do you ensure that teachers and staff are also staying informed?
Yeah. I think I want to piggyback on the last question, right? So when you start talking to teachers and give them time to research, to identify best practice, to co-plan, right, and get together as either a grade level or a content area, right, depending on whether you're elementary, middle, or high. High school teachers like to work across content areas, whereas elementary more across grade levels, right? So we have to give people time to do those things. Part of that time is seeing what's happening in other places, right? Going to trainings and seeing the best practice that's happening in Colorado or happening in Carson City, Nevada, or happening in Hampshire Regional, right? Why not? And so we have to allow teachers time to be professionals. Everybody says, hey, I'm a professional, but yet we don't necessarily act professionally. I'm going to ask you a question. When a doctor identifies a practice that is a life-saving technique, does she hide it in her surgery? No. She invites you to come into the classroom, the theater, and see what's happening and spread that best practice. That's the model that we have to bring to teachers, allow them the time to identify what's happening that's working, that's engaging students, that's driving outcomes up, right? And spread that. Teachers need time to be professional. And that's my job. Our job is to provide that for them. Right? And that's about professional learning. That's about professional development. That's about collaborative time to get together, identify those best practices, and spread them across a content area, a grade level, a school, a district.
Okay, this is a two-part question. If you could please describe an initiative or project you oversaw that was a success and how it impacted students, and how did this project evolve, and what was your part in its evolution?
I can't talk about the other thing again? No, I'm just kidding. All right, one thing that I really try to do, and I'm going to think in the high school level, okay, the secondary level. That's where I was for many years. The last handful of years I've been in the elementary level, and that was on purpose. You know, I know there's a question about a mentor, and I'll talk about that later. But at the high school level, students want to know that you care about them. They want to know that you respect them. Respect just because I'm the principal, or I'm 6'4", or I'm the superintendent, that doesn't earn respect. Respect is given when it's offered to students. So I connect with kids. If you walked in my building in Easthampton, or in West Springfield, or back in Carson City, what you would see is me in the hallways, me at lunch, me at games, me at plays. And that's not because, I don't know, I guess maybe it is. I just love to be around the kids and see what they're doing, right? So connecting with them, engaging with them, making sure they understand that I respect them. It starts a relationship in which they respect me and they care what I'm thinking about, what I'm saying, right? That's important, that kids care, that they know you care about them. So what did I do? When I was at West Springfield, my first year, after coming from Easthampton, and this is after 6 years there, right, I felt pretty confident in my abilities as a leader. So what I did was I met the class that was going to be, I called myself, it was my freshman year, right? It's my first year with that class. So I talked to those students. I said, we're going to be here for 4 years together. And like that, it's going to be graduation, okay? So I'm going to challenge you. Own your learning. Lead in a positive way. Grow school spirit and serve in the community. I'm going to challenge you to do that. And I told them, I promise you, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to listen to you. I am going to help you, no matter what it is that the problem is. Okay, you got in a fight with Sally Sue over there. We're going to deal with that, but I'm here to help you and solve that problem. Right? So I made some promises to them. Coincidentally, I made some promises to the staff that I am going to be there for you. You are going to clearly understand the expectations that I have as a leader for you. There will be accountability that is consistent. You are going to know in a situation if we are making a decision that's going to come out of a consensus, or if I have to make a decision, because sometimes a principal or superintendent has to own that, right? And I'm going to say, hey, we have to make I'm going to make a decision here, but I need your input. I need to hear from you, right? I need to hear from the different districts about that. And so I had those conversations with students and teachers, the challenge to the students and the promises to the teachers. And what we did, what that did was it created a culture, a climate where, you know, and Westside has 1,200 kids, 50 languages plus spoken in the community. Diversity like you don't see here in Westside. Honestly, or excuse me, in Hampshire. I didn't see diversity like that since Carson City when I was teaching in the prison, right? And that's what we had. We had people from Nepal Africa, the Middle East, you name it, we had it. So we had to bring people together so that the climate, the culture was positive, and there was that sense of respect. Did we still have issues? Absolutely. Right? 2016 happened, right? And the election happened, and students started hearing disrespect. They started hearing xenophobia. They started seeing people being divisive and battling. So I started seeing and hearing problems that were not happening before. But because we had created a climate of trust and engagement, we were able to come together. And if you ever go into West Springfield High School, you walk in the main hallway and you look to the right, there's a wall of flags that represents every kid and where they're from. And that meant a lot to our kids. And it helped us get past that hate of the other or that anger of the other that they heard every day in the news. Remember, it's a sphere of influence. I can't affect what's happening in Washington, D.C. I can't affect what's happening in the Middle East. But I can certainly affect positively what's happening within my sphere of influence, and that's what we did. We did. It's not just me, it's we came together and we solved the problem.
Number 5.
How do you prioritize spending in the district? How do you make informed decisions about resource allocation?
Need. It's based on need. And I tell you what, we have to identify the needs that our kids are bringing to the table. When I looked at the data, okay, and I'm not quite the data geek that some are. I do look at it because it's important. But some people are just like diving in, you know. I'm more of a qualitative guy. But looking at the quantitative data, when I look at the data of the district, I see that students with disabilities and low-income students are students that are having more challenges academically around meeting and exceeding expectations, around chronic absenteeism, around discipline. Those are needs that are being shown symptomatically by that data. And so how do we prioritize spending? Based on need. What the school committees, I think, with first 4 rows or first 3 rows, something like that, we need to identify the need based on what's happening within your district, within your school, right? We need to collaborate on that. We need to make sure that we're meeting students where they are, right? Because my kids were very, it was huge for them that Natasha and I are both educators, right? We're both college grads, right? But not everybody has the same track. My dad didn't go to college. He was a cop in Hartford, right? My mom didn't go to college. She's from North Dakota, right? So we have to meet kids where they are. We have to understand who they are and what they bring to the table. Then we have to prepare teachers to meet the kids, right? We have to provide professional development to teachers so that they are ready to find out how we can get you going if your reading scores aren't where they need to be in 3rd grade. That's key, 3rd grade. If our kids aren't reading at grade level in 3rd grade, there's a problem and we have to find it. And then we have to identify interventions, the needs, and bring resources to bear to support them. And I'm not talking about special ed services. That's not what I'm talking about. You know, when you talk about tier 1, what does every kid, what does every person in this building need to succeed, right? But there's a smaller percentage than all of you that needs a little bit more. That's tier 2, right? And then there's tier 3, an even smaller percent of kids that need more. That's what we have to identify. That's how we meet the students where they are and prioritize our spending. Now, while we're doing that, what do we do about Tommy, who is just bored because he's killing it in the classroom? How do we challenge him, right? It's not just about the kids that are struggling, it's about all kids. That's really what inclusion and equity are. That's what inclusion and equity are, right? We have to make sure that we're meeting our students where they are on that spectrum of need. That's how you make those decisions. And you have to look at data. I mean, it's classroom data too, right? We have teachers that are professionals in their classroom that are working with you every day, kids, and they're identifying who do need the interventions at the tier 2 level. We then, Marissa, have to have a conversation about how we bring the resources available for a reading interventionist in 3rd grade to make sure, maybe in 2nd grade, to make sure that those kids are getting what they need.
Okay. Number 6, Don?
How do you involve parents and community members in the decision-making process for the district? Also, how do you build strong relationships with stakeholders? I know you've covered a little bit of that, but
Yeah,
you'll see some of this.
You know, it's a challenge when we have various districts, right? But for me, you know, again, I get excited, I get fired up about the opportunity to be in Westhampton, where I live, and then not to go further than 20 minutes to any school to really know the teachers in that building, to meet the parents of the students in that building. And no hard feelings, but more important for me, to meet the kids in those buildings, right? Because if we have an event that my son, my daughters are singing or dancing or acting, the parents are coming. That's what we have to do to connect with the families, is, I don't mean this in a bad way, is kind of monopolize on that engagement of their own kids, right? So meet them where they are. We're going to have games. I'm going to be at games. I want to meet people there. I want to make sure, if I am fortunate enough to move forward, I want to have listening sessions. I want to go to the schools. I don't know all the principals. You know, Mr. Bates is gone. I don't know the new principal at Westhampton Elementary, right? I know the people here, but I want to meet people, so I have to put myself out there to meet people. Hopefully it'll be a little cooler. You know, there's a lot of platforms you can use. Technology's huge. You know, I am kind of a technological geek, so I don't know if we're a Google district here or not a Google district here. You know, Google is a great platform that we can put communications out. There's platforms, talking points, there's different things that the Power School has. You can put messages out. Power School is, of course, the platform of choice here. But we have to use the platforms available to us to connect. We have to put ourselves out there. And I say we because I'm thinking about a leadership team now. I know that the special services director and the assistant superintendent and the business manager are all leaving. You know, some people will say, oh, you better run to the hills. Well, I'm in the hills. I like it up here. I want to bring my own team here. And I want you to meet them. And I want them to be in the community. You know, I could digress. Let's.
Please describe a mentor you've had, how they affected you, and how you plan to develop existing leaders in our schools.
So, you know, when I mentioned that before, Tim Connor, all right, little digression. So I played football at UMass. I played football for my last year with Paul Connor, who's the chief of police in Westside, okay? His brother, Tim, was a baseball player at UMass. So I start my career at West Springfield, and this guy, Tim, who I'd never met, comes in and he starts yelling, 3 o'clock veto, where is he? 3 o'clock Vito. And I was like, what is he? Who is that? And so come to find out, he used to sit behind my father at the football games at UMass. When Paul and I were playing together, my dad was off the hook. You think I get excited? My dad was always yelling at me and cussing at me, and he would, if I wasn't playing well in the first half, 3 o'clock Vito, he'd start screaming. So they thought I heard that. Never heard that. So that's my introduction to Tim Connor. Tim was a consummate professional. He was a curriculum director from Hamden, Wilbraham. And he came into the district when I came into the district as principal. And we worked together very closely. And he became a mentor to me in leadership. Part of that was because he was a West Side guy. Played baseball in West Springfield High School, grew up in West Springfield. His brother, listen to this, his brother's the chief of police. His wife is the director of Parks and Rec, right? His father was the sergeant that retired after 50 years. So anyways, he became my mentor. And we collaborated together. And that's what mentorship really is. It's a collaboration and engagement between two people, one with different or varied experience from yourself. Maybe they're older, maybe they're not. In this case, Tim was not older than I was, but he was older in experience with respect to central office leadership. And that's the mentor that I needed at that time. So after 5 years as principal, he became superintendent. You're welcome, COVID happens. So I become assistant superintendent during COVID. And his leadership in that time of turmoil was unbelievable. So much so that they stole him. He went to the state, right? He went to DESE, and he left. But his leadership, it was all about communicating, transparency, community, and collaboration. Those things that bring people together around a shared goal. And that's what I believe mentorship is, and that's what I do, is I mentor in that way. And empower teachers, paraprofessionals, students to become leaders in a positive way. And that's what mentorship is. That's how I envision me doing it. Though, again, I need to know you, right? I need to know the teachers at the elementary schools. Who's interested in growth and leading, and who's like loving in the classroom? What can I do to help you? It's on my board right now. I can see it. What can I do to help? That's what it says on my board. It'll say the same thing if you give me an opportunity to lead here. What can I do to help? That's what it's all about for me.
How do you ensure that the district is meeting the needs of all students, including those with special needs or those who are members of an underrepresented group?
I talked some about this. You have to get people who care, right? I'm a huge proponent of like-minded people coming together around an issue, a problem, a concern, and solving it. And our kids need us to do that for them. And so when I think about students with disabilities, or low-income students and low-income students who have disabilities, or students that are English language learners, I know that's not a huge percentage here, but that could change. That wasn't a huge percentage in Westside in the 90s. It certainly changed. Right? So we have to think about and prepare for that. So how do we meet their needs, though, is we have to identify what they are, right? It starts with, if we're talking about students with disabilities, it starts with an IEP and the goals and compliance and making sure we're meeting them where they are, but also making sure that, hey, Dad, we need your partnership. We need you in this process. This is not about us. It's about us. I think about, sorry, Tosh. I think about when we were doing our student teaching together back at Central Connecticut. There was one of the professors that talked about the relationship that is education. And that relationship is a combination of things. It's the teachers, it's the leadership, it's the students, it's the parents. And they all have to come together. And I remember her talking about that. A little sticky, sorry. I remember her talking about that because it's true. And that's what it's all about. We have to come together around the needs of you or your son or your daughter, whomever, right? We have to identify that with data. We need to bring best practice to bear. We need to make sure that the resources that we have are sufficient to make sure teachers are doing what they need to do or are ready to do what they need to do or have the time to collaborate to do what they need to do, and that they are then differentiating instruction for the kids. You know, I looked at the tiered focus monitoring report that came out in October for you guys. I think it was October 23, right? So it was just this past fall. And that tiered focus monitoring, this is one thing I told Tosh I was going to say. You guys are killing it. I mean, 21 standards were being implemented with fidelity. That's got to be if no one's told you that's happened yet, you need to know that because the teachers and the leaders at the sites are doing it right. Because 21 of those standards are being implemented with fidelity. Now, that's the GLOWs, right, the commendations. The GROWs there's 7 that aren't being implemented with fidelity, right? And those are the challenges, the GROWs that we need to make, and that's where we're going to help our kids. Now, I say this because one of those standards that is not being implemented fully is around inclusion, right? Inclusion, to me, is that every student is in a classroom. They are not excluded, meaning the ideal is that we have kids in classrooms with each other. Now, in order to do that, we have to have paraprofessionals that are supported to meet the needs of the kids, right? That know the kids, that know the IEPs, right? That circles back, Marissa, to that talk about how do we provide resources. We got to make sure we got the paras, that they are included with the kids and supporting them. But it's not just about that. It's about teachers and co-teaching, inclusionary practices. That takes time, and it takes support. It takes professional learning. But that's how you meet the needs of all kids. Inclusion. Everyone wants to talk about equity. I want to talk about inclusion first. Because if we're including our kids, then we're being equitable with the resources that we're bringing to bear. You know, it's always diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'd rather flip that and say inclusion. Let's talk about inclusion. That's what the TFM said. That was one of those things. Now, some of the other things were around policies and handbooks and plans. That's on me. Well, sorry. That's on the central office. And there's an opportunity for the central office to step up and do what needs to be done to identify those plans and protocols and policies that need to be updated. Because that too is around equitable access. If you look at the TFM, it's available. Look at the TFM, it talks about what we need to do. That was my number one when I looked at the 7 things. A lot of the other stuff is not classroom-based. That is. That's how we meet the kids where they are.
Okay. Number 9.
What is your experience with using data to make informed decisions about student outcomes? And how do you ensure that teachers and staff are also using data effectively?
I'm not going to, I'm just standing up a second. Okay. So I talked about data already. You know, when I think about data-informed decisions, it's important that we understand what the data actually says, okay? It's important that we're looking at the correct data. And since COVID, right, since 2020, the mental health and wellness of our students and our teachers and our staff has been at risk. And you can see that in the data, right? In the number of the number of FMLA, the number of FMLA, family leave, that people have had to take for their mental health is grown. The number of blowouts, right? When a kid just like, kids don't just do that because they wanna. They do it because there's something wrong. That's a data. So when they're getting suspended around that, we need to look at why. We need to look at that chronic absenteeism and see why that data point is rising. Why is it rising in every school in the district, in every school in the Commonwealth, in every school in the country? That's a data point I want to look at. Because if a kid doesn't feel safe, right? If a kid can't be okay in themselves, they're not going to access the curriculum. That's the data that we need to look at. So what we've tried to do, or what I've tried to do with our team, is look at that data. So we brought in a professor from UConn who subsequently went down to Georgia State, but we looked at our inclusion, our equity, our diversity. We looked at our policies. Were our policies, especially around discipline, negatively affecting some students over other students? Yep, it was. Were our students with disabilities getting suspended more? Yep, they were. Why? That's what we got to find out. Were our dropout rates, and that's something that we have to think about here. Vito, as a member of the community, whether I'm a superintendent or not, that's something we got to think about here. Because students with disabilities are not graduating at the same rate as other students. Low-income students are not graduating at the same rate as other students. That's the data we need to look at. And we need to include Dawn Young in that conversation, right? Paraprofessionals, teachers, because they're the ones that are rubber meets the road. The parents, the kids themselves. That's the data. That's my experience with the data.
10-yard line, last question.
10-yard line. And we can't let him score. I was a linebacker, not a running back, so don't even start me.
Can you give an example of a successful initiative or program you developed and implemented in a previous role? How did it impact student outcomes?
Wow, you guys are hitting that question, huh? Okay, let's think. Oh, yeah. So I'm at West Springfield, and we had this program called Pathways to Prosperity. And it was due to the realities of advanced manufacturing opportunities in West Springfield, we had a relationship that was supported by a grant. We included STCC, right, Springfield Technical Community College, because they have an amazing advanced manufacturing program. And so over the course of 5 years, while I was there, and subsequently since I've left, that program, which once focused, it's called Innovative Pathways now, and if you look at DESE, they talk about early college pathways and innovation pathways, right? And so the goal is not every kid's going to college. Not every kid should go to college. What about the trades, right? What about certification programs? Now, I'm not saying STIC's not a college, it is, but they also have programs to prepare kids for work. Advanced manufacturing. We have kids now, and this is, I'm saying we because it isn't just me, we have kids now that are graduating, right, by virtue of dual enrollment credits with 2 semesters paid for at any community college here, right? They transfer to any state college in Massachusetts. That Innovation Pathway program blew up. How did it blow up? Well, formerly we were using a counselor, a guidance counselor in the position, but it wasn't going the way we thought it could go. So Tim, as curriculum director, Knew a guy that was in the business world that was marketing. We brought him in. And he took that program and it blew up. Where we have now, the goal, of course, around many of the grants is equity, making sure that all students have the same access to programming. That was one of the other TFM things that it said, making sure that all kids have access to the programming that's available at the school. And that's what we did. And now we're seeing diverse kids in our program, and the program has expanded beyond advanced manufacturing to the health services. And we are, and computers, so we have 3 now, when we had 1 before, and kids are taking off and getting the credits through dual enrollment that are then bringing them to college. So, Dad, it's saving you X amount of money because dual enrollment is being paid for by the grant. It's being provided at our school. Professors are coming and kids are going. And we're getting kids in programs like advanced manufacturing firms in Westside, and the kids are doing it. We have to think about how we're doing what we're doing and doing it better to meet kids where they are. And that's something that, again, no one does it by themselves. No one does. Even your Bill Gates, he's taking money and he's going, here. And then you get a team together and you create something that engages kids, connects with kids, supports kids. And that, I think, probably the Innovation Pathway program is probably one of the best things that I was involved with in Westside. Because it's not just about the AP kids, right? It's not just about the advanced placement classes, right? The College Board wants your kids to take AP classes, right? They wanted my kids to take AP classes. But in order to get the credit, you have to take a test and pass at a certain level. You got to get 3 or better. Dual enrollment's not like that. You go take a college class in your area, and you're getting credit for it by virtue of the dual enrollment. And that, I think, is probably one of the programs I'm most excited about being a part of.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. 1 minute over.
1 minute.
On behalf of all the committees, we appreciate your time coming in tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to take a 9-minute break. A reminder, if anybody wants to sign up for public speaking, now's the time to get your name on the list. After the next candidate, we will shut off signups to limit the public speaking.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Well, 7:05, we'll start with the next candidate. 7 minutes?
It's only an 8-minute.
Hey, back on the live broadcast. All right, again, just a reminder, if you want to, now's the time to sign up for public speaking. Liz LaFont in the back of the room from the MASC has the list. And at this point, we're going to bring in our second candidate, and this is Mark Goslin. Mark? Welcome. You want to leave your jacket on? It's going to get warm.
Yeah, I'll start. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Okay. First, thank you for coming in tonight. And we're going to start with a little introduction of the head tables. Don, you go first.
Hi, I'm Don Willard, Chesterfield-Goshen.
My name is Tom Clary. I'm from Hampshire Regional.
I'm John Lumber from Southampton.
I am Morley Clary from Westhampton Elementary.
Marissa Nye from Williamsburg.
And the five of us make up the chairs of the five committees, and the first 3 or 4-ish roles are all the other school committee members, and then the members of the public, and the press is all over there. So if you want to look that way, they can get your good side.
Sure.
If we want,
Good luck with that.
if we want to give you 3 minutes just to introduce yourself and any opening comments that you'd like to make.
Sure. Is that number one, or you?
No, no,
Oh, sorry.
and then we'll get to
All
number
right.
one.
Sure. So, thank you for having me. My name is Mark Goslin, and I'm bringing over 20 years of experience to the district. I'm really excited to be here tonight. When I saw that Hampshire Regional was doing a search, it immediately piqued my curiosity. I've had some great experiences with Hampshire Regional while I was at superintendent at Lennox. And so when I saw the opportunity here, and the needs of the district, it really matched my skill set, and it was something that I was instantly drawn to. I'm originally a Massachusetts native. Originally a Massachusetts native. Oh, thank you. And so for me, it kind of feels like a homecoming. In fact, when I was driving around and exploring the area, I told my wife, it's interesting to me. It almost feels like a homecoming. There's something comforting about Massachusetts. It's like a warm blanket or something, And so we've lived around a little bit. So we've lived in Pennsylvania for 20 years. So we recently relocated to New England. And so for me, again, this feels very much like home. And so I'm really happy to be here tonight.
Okay, thank you. We're just going to start with Don with question one. We'll work our way around the room.
Sure.
Don?
Could you please share with us what you know about our district and why this is the next step for you in your career?
So, I don't think you have to go very far to hear about the district. It has an excellent reputation, and I think one of the things that really strikes me about the district is how there's something for everyone. Certainly there's strong academics, it has great athletics, great art programs, but when you go online and you read about the district, or you talk to people from the district, one of the things that always comes through is how much the students love the district, how much they love their teachers, what wonderful experiences they had here. And that's something you don't usually see. Like, it's easy for people to say, yeah, school was okay, or they want to do like one of those Amazon reviews and tell you all the things that were terrible about it, but you don't find that. Really, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, the students who have gone through here have nothing but the highest praise for the region. And so, again, the reputation was something that we were very well aware of when I was in Lennox. It's an excellent district. I had some opportunities to work with folks from the district on different teams over the last couple of years. And so, this to me is a perfect step in my career. I think, one, the needs of the district are skills that I certainly bring with me to the district, but I've spent my entire career, save for a few stops, in regionals. So I was a school teacher in a regional school district in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. I was a principal in a regional district outside of Philadelphia. I was a superintendent in a regional school district. And so regionals are something that are near and dear to my heart and make a lot of sense to me. And so when I saw that this opportunity was here, I thought this would be a great stop in my career, good work that I could do here to really help elevate the district and help lead the district forward into its next chapter.
What's your experience with developing and implementing educational programs, and how have you worked with teachers and staff to improve student outcomes?
So this is something that I have a lot of experience with. So as a school principal, I also worked in central office as a special ed director and as a curriculum director, and also as a superintendent. So many times I had the opportunity to lead and develop new educational programs. And one of the things I think that really stuck out to me was when I was recently in Region 12 in Connecticut. Again, we were a very high-performing district, but our math scores in particular were a little bit concerning to me and didn't really fit the rest of our academic profile. And so I rolled up my sleeves and I worked with our high school teachers, their math department. We met weekly to do research around how to improve math instruction, to lay out a framework together to improve math instruction along with the department chair. We layered in a professional development plan to help them grow in a way that was supportive and not punitive. And we saw that that really moved the needle in students taking more advanced math courses and then also looking to go into math and other STEM-related careers after school. One of the things that really struck me was how few kids were going into either math or science-related careers when we look around us, there are such a need in those areas. And so I felt that there was something the school was doing that was kind of closing doors to the kids in those areas. And somewhere along the way, there was just messaging that maybe math wasn't for them. And so we dug in and we improved the math program. And I think that that was something that was a game changer for our kids. And our teachers were wonderful partners in that work. You know, again, you can't do this all alone. I'm not always going to have all the solutions. But I really believe that when you articulate the need and when you build consensus and get support, that you can do great things for kids and you can really change the students' trajectories and life outcomes. And so that was something that was kind of fun for me in terms of improving and developing an educational program.
How do you stay up to date on the latest trends, research, advancements, best practices in curriculum and instruction? And how do you ensure that teachers and staff are also staying informed?
So I'm a voracious reader and researcher. I had the good fortune of going to one of the best education programs in the country at the University of Pennsylvania, and so that helped me get in touch with and stay in touch with some of the top researchers in the country in these areas. But then I also do a lot of work on my own in terms of going to conferences, continuing to read journals and books, and most recently, it was 2 years ago, I started reading articles about artificial intelligence. And so I remember distinctly opening the newspaper. I usually read at least 1 or 2 national papers a day. And so I noticed that in the same day, there was a story above the fold in both the New York Times and in the Washington Post about artificial intelligence. And that was one of these like aha moments. I'm like, something big is happening here. I don't really know what this even is, but I need to learn more. So I enrolled in a course at MIT to learn more about artificial intelligence, because I really wanted to understand kind of the inner workings of this before I started to think about what that meant for education. And so that's just one example of how I try to stay informed and stay abreast of what's new and what's the latest and greatest. I also have been integral in working with other superintendents, other leaders across the country in focus groups and in learning cohorts. And so when I was in the Berkshires, we met weekly as a superintendent group to talk about new and updated things coming in education. We had a similar group that met in Connecticut as well. And so, you know, sharing that information, I think, is really helpful. And then I'm always thinking about how do we then translate that to teachers. And in my career, I spent a lot of time when I was in North Penn serving on different curriculum committees. And so we did research about best practices, and that was things like micro-credentialing for teachers and personalized professional development programs. And so we worked with teachers and said, what are your needs? And we sought the staff input and what it was that they needed to learn and what they wanted to get better at. And then taking their lead, we developed opportunities for them to have a personalized PD course rather than a one-size-fits-all. And that was, again, something that was a game changer for us. It led to tremendous staff satisfaction, which was great. And also, it was something that other folks from neighboring districts around Pennsylvania came in and said, let us learn more about that. So you're not doing the same thing for everybody anymore? And we said, no, like we have this whole personalized system. And so that was an area where people came out and leaned in to learn more. So again, staying up to date on the latest advances. I literally am reading about this probably every single day, so it's something that's an area of passion of mine, and it's something that I'm always looking to work with teams of teacher leaders and our principals to make sure that they're staying informed and that we're working together to help meet the needs and help them learn things that they want to learn, right? One of the things that I always try to do is create a culture of yes. And so if someone says, I really want to learn more about, this program, maybe it's astronomy, I want to say, well, all right, what do I need to do to help make that a reality for you? What do you need to learn? What kind of financial resources do you need to make that a go? And then putting those into play. So I try, like I said, everything that I can to stay up to date and then to share that along with our teachers and staff so that they can be their best and ultimately impact kids.
Okay. Orly?
Could you please describe an initiative or project you oversaw that was a success and how it impacted students? How did this project evolve, and what was your part in the evolution?
Wow, so there's been so many of them, but I think one that probably really stands out to me is when I was a school principal, I was an elementary school principal in North Penn, which is in suburban Philadelphia. And when I got to the school, I noticed that we were a school where all of the students in the district, we had 13 elementary schools, so all the students with special needs were coming to my building. And that was curious that they were shipping all the kids from the entire district to one school. And I started to have some conversation with folks around the district saying, this seems a little odd to me. This wasn't my experience in Massachusetts. This also doesn't feel like it's in concert with federal law. And also, as I'm in here looking at the curriculum, these kids are getting an alternate curriculum, if any at all, right? I went in one class and a kid was sitting there in a wheelchair with a corn popper, and I was like, how is that an education, right? So I came away from that and said, we can do better. I said, we would never put all the students who are the same race in one class. We would never put all the students in the same gender in one class. So why is it that this is a line that we can draw? So to me, it was a real civil rights issue. And so I wanted to do better. We partnered with Dr. Hayer from Harvard University to help train our staff in inclusive practices and ways that we can include students with special needs in the regular education classrooms. And when we said all meant all, we really meant that. So we didn't just talk the talk, we walked the walk. And so we didn't just include the easy to include kids, but we include all the kids. And what happened was phenomenal. One, the educational attainment and the test scores of our general education population remain unchanged. But for our special education students, their performance skyrocketed. They were performing in ways that we had never seen a special education population perform. One, I think, was just they had more access now to the core curriculum. They were being challenged. We were also taking whatever the skill was in that class and essentializing it to their needs. So if it was a division lesson, we're saying, okay, how can this student maybe now take some counters in a bag and distribute these so that they're still going through the same conceptual exercise of breaking a number into smaller groups. And while the learning outcomes were immense, it also changed our community and our culture. I wrote a grant to Lowe's to receive money to build a handicap-accessible playground. We were fortunate to get that, and so we were able to develop a playground outside because previously to that, the kids were going outside and they could roll around in a wheelchair on the blacktop, but all the other kids had swings to play on and grass to run in. And so, again, I thought these kids should also deserve a chance to have meaningful recreation opportunities. So that playground was something that was tremendous. The other thing that we saw was that friendships started to emerge. Prior to inclusion, these students came on a bus after the other students arrived, and they left on a bus before the other students got out of school, and they ate lunch at a separate time. So there was absolutely no cross-pollination during the day with the regular education peers. And so now they're in their classrooms, and now we're seeing tremendous changes. A little girl drew me a picture of a boy in a wheelchair, and she was holding his hand in the picture, and they were walking out toward the playground for recess. When I showed that to the student's dad, he broke down in tears and cried, and he said, "This is incredible." He said at his previous school, he sat there and he cried all day, and they told me I had to put him in a special school because he won't do anything but cry. All the student was crying out for, in reality, was a chance to learn, to be meaningfully included and to have some friends, right? We had another student who was medically fragile. She was on a breathing machine. Now she's getting invited to sleepover parties. This was a student who no one knew her name the previous year. Now, when she's absent for a surgery, kids are asking where she is. Can we make cards for her, right? Again, a completely different childhood. I get a little choked up. One of my students recently passed away, and he was a kid. They called me and they said, "You gotta go over to Easter Seals and meet this little boy. We're gonna have to put him in a special school, but I want you to be prepared for his IEP meeting." So I went there and I met this little boy, and he was the cutest, sweetest little guy. He had a neurological disorder which caused him to want to self-mutilate, so he was kind of strapped to a wheelchair. But he was incredibly engaging and articulate, and was just excited about life. And so I said, no, he's not going to go to a special school. He's actually going to come to kindergarten like a regular student. And so he came to our school, and he quickly became the mayor of the school. Everyone loved him. I would go in his class, he would blow me kisses, and he was so excited I was there. And he was just the most amazing child. And after he passed away, it was devastating for the community. We had a huge outpouring of folks who went down for his funeral. But his parents said, "Thank you for giving him a childhood that had this not happened, he had such limited time with us. This could have been a tremendously different life, not short as it was," right? And so those were the things that, I found that by putting this into practice were just tremendous. I never thought that I would be a, special education rights, advocate at earlier points in my career, but this was one of those pivotal moments where there was a civil rights need. I knew we could do better. We did it, had tremendous outcomes. I was invited to speak at the National Principals Conference, and this was, again, one of the sold-out sessions at the Principals Conference. It was wildly popular, and we had school leaders from all over the country come and visit our school to see how you can do this work. And so that's something I'm particularly proud of, and I think that's a good example for, something that I did that changed the climate, the culture of the school, learning opportunities for kids, and also, I think, increased the awareness and sensitivity of students across the board in a way that was immeasurable and unimaginable.
Thank you. Number 5.
How do you prioritize spending in the district? How do you make informed decisions about resource allocation?
Yeah, so this is always one of the big challenges in schools, right? There's never enough money to go around. We were joking in the hallway, before this evening that, there's very little discretionary spending. Almost every dollar in a school budget has a job, right? But we still have to be very savvy and strategic about how we use that money. And so when I think about how do we prioritize, I always think about what is school about? And for me, now listen, I was an athlete, I was in the arts, I love all the extracurricular stuff. I think that gives, a lot of life and energy to schools. There was just a softball game out there today. That was so meaningful for those girls to win that game today. At the same time, when I think about this and I try to set those, other passions aside, I say, at the heart of this whole thing, it's really about teaching and learning. It's the interaction between teachers and students in classrooms, right? And so to me, I call that the instructional core. And so that's where money and resources have to always stem from, first and foremost, is how is this going to impact teaching and learning for students in classrooms? And then we kind of work in concentric circles, working outward to some of the things that are more ancillary to schools. Modern comprehensive schools, we do a lot, right? Everything from dental care to medical services, you name it. And so we have this huge gamut of things that we do, and it's amazing, and I'm glad that we do all these things. But when money is tight and we have to really, think about where do we make the number one investment, it's always, to me, in the heart of that physical plant. I've had to get very strategic in my career. When I was a school principal in Philadelphia, one of the largest, poorest districts in the United States, over 200 schools, 200,000 students, I got my first budget at our opening principals meeting. Now, in Philadelphia, there's so many principals that they have to rent out the Pennsylvania Convention Center just to get all the principals in one place. So I'm a newly minted principal, I get my budget, I go back, I'm all excited, and I look at the sheet and it says I have $168. And I thought, all right, no biggie, someone just made a rounding mistake in central office, I'm sure we can fix this later. I started tapping people, hey, does yours look like this? Does yours look like this? And they're saying, no, we have tens of thousands of dollars. I don't know why you have 168. That seems a little strange. So finally I catch up to the finance manager and I said, yeah, I didn't want to make a big deal about this on the first day, but I think there's a mistake in my budget. And he said, well, let's look at it. And he's going through all the numbers, and he said, nope, that's right, that's what the, previous principal left. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. And we were under a site-based management model, so literally, I'm from one elementary school, cutting the checks for my books, for my paper, for my utility bills. I think the only thing that came centrally allocated was teacher salaries, but everything else, we were like literally paying. It was an interesting model at the time, but it was also wildly inefficient. And you would go from one classroom, they had one series of textbooks, the fourth grade next door has a completely different one. So we might have Reading Street in this one, and we have Journeys in this one. And in those classrooms, you were lucky if you had enough books to even have enough for the entire class, right? So I was going back down to the central office, underneath the basement in Philadelphia, they call it like the catacombs. And so I'm in there looking through these big piles of like discarded stuff to see if I could cobble together enough extra copies so that we could actually have class sets. I taught my faculty and staff how to give some reading tests because they had never done this type of thing before. So I was in the trenches training them how to do this work. I had no paper, so I had to go to my state representative's office and use his copy machine to make these booklets, and I'm teaching the teachers and the parents how to do these tests. So, I know about limited budgets and how to get creative and resourceful when you have to, but even there, where it was like mission impossible, we focused on teaching and learning, and we still grew our test scores, right? And so when you focus on the right things and you put your money in the right place, that can still be a tremendous driver. And like I said, it's not always easy, and sometimes you have to get creative, but that's the way that I approach prioritizing spending in the district.
How do you involve parents and community members in the decision-making process for the district? And how do you build strong relationships with stakeholders?
So I think that stakeholder relationships are probably the heart and soul of the entire district, right? And I think that transparency and authenticity is really important. And I think giving parents a voice is crucially important. So when I was a principal and was a superintendent, in both contexts, we utilized a team-based approach to running the schools. And so everyone was on different teams. We had a technology team, a curriculum team. And in both contexts, I opened that team a little wider than we were used to, and I said, we're gonna involve some parents on this. And my teachers initially were like, oh, I don't know about this. And I said, well, let's lean into this. Why? What are you afraid of? And they said, well, what if they don't like what they hear, what they see? And I said, I don't know, they may not, but I don't see why they would, but and let's learn about it. And if there's issues that we have to talk about, then let's have those conversations and talk about it. And my approach was that, and my belief was that, by bringing parents in, they allow us to see things that we can't see. So it's too easy in schools to succumb to kind of groupthink and this insider perspective. And we do things so often together in the same ways that it's hard to see this from another lens or reimagine this. And so a parent gives you a whole different perspective. Yes, like when kids are at home, they're saying this, or yeah, when I pull up the bus loop, it's pandemonium, right? Like whatever it might be, parents are another great voice in this process. Hey, I go to use the student information system and I can never get my kids' grades or they're never right. So parents helped us make better decisions by joining with us. And so that was something that was powerful. I've always made opportunities for parents to have an open night with the principal multiple times, or the superintendent multiple times of the year. And so I just called them, conversations with Mark, and they would come in, or meetings with Mark, and they would just come by. We'd have no agenda. We would just sit down in a room like this, or in the library, or wherever, and we would just have a conversation. People could ask questions. They could get information. Sometimes in communities there's distrust about schools. People think that, schools are shady and they don't tell us all the facts and I don't understand what's going on. I heard this. And so I feel like the best way to just cut through all of that is to say, come on in, let's talk about things, right? Like this is, the schools belong to the community. And I think public schools are one of the most beautiful things in America because literally communities tax themselves electively to build these things for kids. I mean, that's a pretty awesome model when you think about it, right? And so this does belong to the folks, and so I want their input. I want them to be partners. And then, when it becomes time for budgets or, negotiations and things like that, then, it's a lot easier to have that buy-in and everyone's on the same page and we all understand what's going on. And so I believe that transparency rules, and I think that, schools need to be open to the community and partnering with our communities. And so I've partnered with parents, we partnered with industry groups. In my last district, we had an agricultural program, so I was partnering with farmers and saying, hey, like, tell me what we need to do to improve, our pathway from our agricultural program to jobs out in agricultural sectors, whether that's in farms or mechanics or what have you, welding. So we were working with other industry partners as well. So I think there's tremendous value in having that stakeholder outreach, and I think the most important thing that any superintendent can do is listen. Just really sit back and listen and take in information. I think sometimes, superintendents want to just speak and be the expert in the room all the time, but I think that you become a much better superintendent and you learn a lot more when you talk less and listen more.
Please describe a mentor you've had, how they affected you, and how you plan to develop existing leaders in our schools.
Man, I've had so many, so it's hard to pick one. But I would say when I was in the school district of Philadelphia, my assistant superintendent, Karen Kolsky, was probably the best mentor I ever had. So again, as I said earlier, Philadelphia is big beyond comprehension. There's nothing that even comes close to it in Massachusetts or many states for that matter. So it's broken down into these sub-networks, right? And so I was in Learning Network 7, and that network alone, we had 70 schools. So she was basically like the superintendent for those 70 schools under the chief superintendent at the time, Dr. Height. But Dr. Kolsky said to me early on, first year principal, you're not just gonna be a principal, you're going places. I said, what are you talking about? And she said, I was like, oh man, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? Where am I going? And she said, no. There's something about you that, is unique, and you're gonna go on and you're gonna get a doctorate, and you're gonna go to Penn and do it. And I said, whoa, Dr. Kolsky, we're in the midst of a financial crisis, like my school's gonna probably get shut down. They're not giving us any tuition remission to go back to school. I can't afford to go to UPenn of all places. This is nuts. And she said, well, promise me that if you ever get the opportunity that you'll do it. And she said, because I really believe in you, and I think there's something special about you. And Dr. Kolsky just led by example. We would have our principals meetings for our network, and she never came in with just a laundry list of to-dos and, the day-to-day kind of housekeeping stuff. That stuff all came by email. When we were together, it was all about learning. And so there was always a targeted agenda to teach us something that made us better when we came out of that meeting a few hours later than we were a few hours earlier when we went into it. And I really appreciated that. I always felt like I'm growing and learning. I love to learn, and so this was something that, to me, was just so magical to have a leader that would do that and would focus on learning and developing principles rather than just, here's the marching orders. So fast forward, I then move into the suburbs, and we do have some money to go back to school, and I applied to Penn, and I get called to go for this tryout. And so I walk into this building, and there's 200 and some odd people from around the country, and we have to go through all these different stations and do these activities, and we're being observed. It was the strangest kind of application to a graduate school ever. And somehow I was picked to be 25 people worldwide that were accepted into this program. In fact, there was only a few of us from public schools. It was mostly independent school folks, charter school folks, and some folks from international schools or other NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And so she was right. It was an amazing opportunity. I learned and grew so much as a leader, as an educator, as a learner. And so, I look at her as a mentor that really, I think, helped change my stars. I'm the first person from my family to ever go to college. I guess now they call it a first generation. I didn't even know that was like a thing, but that's the new term. Now when you apply for jobs, they ask you, you're a first gen student. So I guess I'm proudly that. And so, to go from being the first person in my family to ever go to college to then getting a degree from one of the best, like a doctorate from one of the best, is just an amazing opportunity. And if I didn't have Dr. Kolsky kind of cheerleading me on and rooting for me along the way, probably never would have pursued that. So that's the mentor that I look up to.
How do you ensure that the district is meeting the needs of all students, including those with special needs or those who are members of underrepresented groups?
So this was literally my job when I worked for the North Penn School District. North Penn, like I said, is a large regional school district. We had 18 schools overall, servicing about 15,000 students. And my job was to oversee our student data and our equity. And so I needed to use data and lead a team of folks to analyze that and ensure that we weren't offering disproportional outcomes to students. And so it was grueling work, and it was work that revealed a lot of things that we wish we didn't know, but made us better that we did, right? We saw that, unfortunately, students from underrepresented populations were not taking advanced level classes. They were getting in trouble far more often. When they got in trouble in the student information system, I found that coding was used in a way that coded their infractions more violently and with more charged language than with others. And so, you know, there were things that were well within our locus of control that we weren't even aware that we were doing. And so this was work that, you know, again, we worked with some national leaders, a gentleman named Eddie Fergus, who helped us do some of this work. But it made us a much better organization by being able to turn over these stones, find the things that we can make better, put action plans together, equity plans together, and develop policies around these things so that we can improve and reduce disproportionality in our district. Again, this was something that was pretty novel at the time. I then was invited to work on a state level team where we created the equity policy for the entire state of Pennsylvania that was then adopted by 501 school districts so that they could do the similar work to reduce disproportionality for their students. Now, disproportionality is when you have a higher likelihood of a certain outcome that would kind of defy statistics, right? So if you had, let's say, a 3% African-American student population, but they were getting in trouble 20% of the time, that defies statistics. The numbers should stay kind of relative. So it should be, well, if you have 3%, they should be represented about 3% of the disciplinary infractions. And so those were areas where we were trying to find out where we were at least 2.5 times greater than a natural proportion. Special education identification was another area that we found lots of areas for improvement, particularly over identification of African-American boys, especially for a kind of strange qualifying category called other health impairment. So it was one where you said, well, there's nothing we can really say, but it's something else, and so we're just going to lump it in and say something's wrong with this kid, and here's this kind of nebulous label that we're going to stick to it. Again, that's a very unusual type of thing. You don't see that outside of education all that often, and this is something that's also now attracting a lot of national attention in terms of what that label even means, who it gets applied to, and what are the outcomes of that. And so this was work that, you know, again, I rolled up my sleeves, dug in, and did some excellent work with some really talented people to help make life better for kids. And so I think that's one way that we made sure that we were meeting the needs for all learners.
Okay.
You've touched on this a little bit, but if you could tell us, what is your experience with using data to make informed decisions about student outcomes, and how do you ensure that teachers and staff are also using data effectively?
Yeah, so, you know, again, I gave you an example that where we use data to look at some of our underrepresented groups and making sure that they were getting an equal shake in schools. But another way that data was critically important was when I was a superintendent in Region 12. So our teachers had no data system whatsoever. They might take, you know, a quick passing glance at test scores back from the state, but that was about it. So when I talked to our principals, I realized that they really weren't doing a lot of data-driven leadership. It was just kind of, the teachers just kind of do their thing and everything kind of works out. And I thought, again, we owe it to our students, we owe it to the taxpayers, we owe it to parents to do better. And so I brought a student information warehouse on board and some quick and easy assessments that we could give so that we could use some data other than just state test data to learn about what students knew and where we could help them grow. We helped our teachers grow in their use of data. We also taught them a lot about the science of reading, and so we could use different elements of the science of reading to help analyze reading a little bit more fine-grained. And then I think the most important piece of data, and this is kind of a non-traditional sense, but like data lives in different buckets, right? So there's that kind of test data, the numerical stuff that we get, right? There's demographic data, kind of who are the kids that we get. There's also perceptual data when we do polling, and so we would constantly be polling our parents and our teachers and our students to find out their experiences. And then there's process data, and that's some of the stuff that we're in control of and what's happening. Are we hiring the right people? Are we losing teachers? Are we losing central office staff? Are we losing students? And what of the mechanisms in our control are leading to some of those outcomes, right? But one of the things that I also did in a non-traditional sense was I ate lunch every day with students. I started this as a principal, and I did this when I was a superintendent as well. I would eat lunch every day with some seniors, and I would talk to them, and I would learn about them and their lived experiences as students, right? And so that anecdotal data, this wasn't, something that was on the MCAS or on the SAT or anything like that, but it was the day-to-day interactions with students telling me their stories. And I learned so much from talking to students about how to improve schooling that it's a practice that I would never give up from this point forward because it's so powerful in really understanding schools. And also developing relationships. I even asked the students, like, do you even care if the superintendent's around? I never saw my superintendent when I went to school, and they said, it's vitally important, and we love that you come to our games and to all of our events, and you show up to our fairs and our celebrations and our, agricultural nights and whatever it is. So, that stuff was important, but I also learned about some of the, bullying that happens, behind the scenes. I learned about social media that, kids are dealing with. I learned about anxiety that kids are wrestling with and where that comes from. I learned about disconnects between different parts of the school, our ag students not really being integrated in with our regular ed non-ag program, our more academic kids. And so those student conversations were just pivotal in terms of helping me be a better leader and helping to improve schools for kids. It led to us bringing in the Anti-Defamation League to do some work around bullying and around increasing our tolerance for belonging and understanding. And I think it made the school a better place. The kids loved the fact that they could reach out and email me or just stop me because now I had a relationship with every kid in the district. I loved the fact that I also knew every single kid and what they wanted to do, and or I knew that there were kids that didn't have a plan. And that was another thing that really kind of struck a chord with me as a leader. It said, there are kids that went through our program that really had no plan after school. We have to do better for those kids. We have to catch those kids. Every student should have a plan. And so I worked with our guidance department to start having touch points early with kids, to develop personalized plans for students so that every student felt that they had a plan after school. I'm not saying that every kid has to go to an Ivy League school, every kid has to go to college. But if a student wants to be an entrepreneur, if a student wants to go into the military, if a student wants to go into work, we wanted to make sure that we had a plan for them. We were supportive, and we were helping plug them into the networks that they needed to make those dreams a reality. So those are things that, had I not talked to kids day in and day out, I never would have learned. So of all the data that's out there, I would definitely say that relational, anecdotal data from talking to students is by far the most valuable.
Thank you.
Can you give an example of a successful initiative or program you developed and implemented in a previous role? How did it impact student outcomes?
All right, so, we talked a little about inclusion, and there's been other ones that have been really exciting. We installed the planetarium, and we started a space program. We designed a TV lab to do TV work for kids, and that was really exciting. We had the agricultural program, which, again, was just phenomenal and gave a whole new slate of opportunities to students from who maybe weren't as engaged with school previously. But I think one of the ones that really stood out to me was breathing new life into what we call the senior project. And the senior project is a capstone experience. It's almost like a mini dissertation, if you will, for high school students. It's a year-long research program that's in-depth, student selected, and then they have to present at the end of the school year a 20-minute presentation sharing the findings from whatever it is that they explored. So some kids did authentic research. I had one girl, she did a test to see if working in a memory care facility and having the patients in the memory care facility engage in flower arranging programs, if that helped improve their memory scores. And that was something that, again, I would see maybe in a university as published research. It was actually really well done. I had other kids say, you know, I want to learn about restoring a historic boat, and so they would work on that project. Other students said, I want to, you know, research how to start a certain business, and so they would do that all year. We had some folks who said, you know, I'm doing this deep study on the way that we trim the hooves of horses and the angle and what differences that makes in different contexts. So again, the gamut was wide. Students could pick whatever it was that was their area of interest or passion. And what I loved about Senior Project was, one, it really put kids through the paces intellectually, but it also tapped into passion, and so kids were really excited about learning, right? So much of learning is done to you. This was learning that they actually got to do for themselves, and they had some guidance from staff that worked with them and set deadlines for them, but the students owned the learning, and that was really exciting. And then I think the other thing that was just crucially important was, for some of these kids, it also gave them a new life course, right? And so some students said, because of my senior project, I now know that I want to go and do this. And maybe that's study a certain topic that they previously had never thought about before. So maybe, you know, learning about beekeeping, now they want to go and study that at college. Or go into business or into some other trade that all of a sudden they have a new passion for because of the senior project. So that was something that I think was just an amazing program that we did a great job of really ratcheting up the importance of that, the academic heft, so to speak, of that program. You know, you couldn't just say, I'm going to go and rate who has the best cheeseburgers in town, right? That's kind of, you know, not intellectually challenging enough. But we wanted to make sure that was something that, you know, gave kids a little bit of a stretch, but then also tied into areas of passion and let them own their learning in ways that were deeply meaningful. And so that was a program that I thought was really unique. And again, what stood out, and we had a lot of other really cool programs going on at the time, but that one to me is one that I'll never forget.
Okay. That concludes the questions. On behalf of the collective committees, I'd like to thank you for coming in and spending some warm time with us this evening. And you get extra points for keeping your coat on the whole time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to take another 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for our public comment section. Okay? Thank you.
I drink it? Is that a bowl?
This site for public comment. In order to participate in public comment, one had to sign up the first 2 hours of the event. We closed public comment. Nobody signed up. Therefore, public comment is open and closed. Moving on to our 9 o'clock item. So, all right, so at this point, we're going to caucus. Now, originally, when we wrote this, we set aside an hour for public comment so we can start to have a little bit of flexibility. But under the all-district committee agreement to hire superintendent, on or around bullet point number 3, after we get through, we're at the stage now where each individual committee is to caucus. It has to happen in an open session. It has to happen in the same room because I know in some that have been on previous searches, everyone's kind of shot off to their own room, held their caucus, and then came back. Under the advice of legal counsel, that would be a violation in her view of open meeting because we would then force the non-people participating to determine which meeting they wanted to attend. And since it's on the same subject and it's the same matter, we need to go committee by committee. So initially, we can start with with what we had outlined, a 12-minute, and we can play by ear and see if committees need more time or not. If committees don't need the time, we can just yield and move forward. The intent of your caucus is at the conclusion of your caucus, you should be taking a straw poll and be prepared to report out to the collective group so that at the end of this, we determine whether or not we are on complete ends of the spectrum or if we're unanimous or not, but it'll determine next steps. Any procedural questions? No. First on the list in complete random order, and nobody objected to when I wrote it, is Williamsburg. So at this point, only Williamsburg has the floor, and the Williamsburg chair will take over for the next 12 minutes.
Should people come to that microphone?
I think Colin believes they'll be able to be heard from their seats with the room mics.
Not just that, they'll also be able to be seen.
So you want them at the microphone?
Front of their face will be able to be seen as opposed to just the back of their face.
Okay, so could the rest of the Williamsburg committee meet at the microphone? This is still part of your 12 minutes.
Yeah. Anyone want to share their thoughts?
I'll go first. I don't have an issue. I think both of them, I think I muted them.
Talk to the sound guy.
Just press anything.
All right, that's better, right? Everybody can hear me now? Okay, so I thought that the first candidate, I think he would be an absolutely amazing principal. I don't know if the skill sets for being a superintendent are the same as being a principal. I've never been a principal or a superintendent. So I thought he was very personable. I thought that he answered questions, to my satisfaction. A lot of anecdotes. I think what we really need is somebody who's going to get down to business and not have lots of talks with students. I sort of thought the second candidate made me feel a little bit more comfortable about his business acumen, less storytelling and more talking about his accomplishments. But that, I don't have a strong opinion either way. If we have to pick between both of them, I need to be swayed one way or the other. That's.
I do have a strong opinion. I think Michael is the clear candidate to me as an educator. He had far more to say, as an educator myself. I felt that he had far more specific and relevant examples to share. I thought that his commitment to the work went far beyond just like a performance. It really felt authentic to me. Just everything about his presentation felt more robust and grounded in real evidence and lived experience. And I would feel totally confident if he would be willing to work with us, that he could help us with a lot of the things we need help with. So it's my choice.
I would echo what Nicole said. I think there is one clear choice, and I think it's the second candidate. He clearly knows how to move difficult work forward. And the steps that he took and the examples he gave to encourage collaboration, to get feedback from teachers, to get feedback from kids and families is essential to doing the kind of work he was moving forward. He has a very strong background in understanding the needs of all students, including the students that may be struggling with learning. And I think everything he said made absolute sense. That said, the person that he highlighted as his mentor in the first example he gave of special education was also my mentor. And so I have kind of an inside track on what it means to do that work. And I think what he said about that work is authentic and real. And I think he's got the fund of knowledge and the breadth of knowledge to move the district forward. I also think that he gave very, very specific examples of how he stays on top of things. And I really loved his AI example as well, of seeing that suddenly start to appear places and then begin to think about how is that going to impact education. I know there's a lot of research out there and a lot of talk out there about implementing science of reading. He's got a background in that. So I think that, for me, he's the clear candidate.
I too have to echo what both Nicole and Glenda had to say. I was incredibly impressed by candidate number 2, Mark Goslin. That's not to say that candidate 1 couldn't do the job. I believe he could. It would have a very, very different look and feel, and I really felt that Dr. Goslin was incredibly innovative and sensitive, and he was also humble. When I think of what he could bring to the table, was very impressive. I think we're fortunate to have these 2 candidates to consider, and when asked to choose, I would go with number 2.
Thank you. I felt like I was impressed by both candidates equally for different reasons. I really loved that Mark said, talk less, listen more. That was really impressive to me. It was impressive to me that he was one of 25 people worldwide to attend that UPenn program. I liked the way that he spoke about the different things that he has done. I think that Vito would also be a really strong candidate for Hampshire for different reasons. I think that we need someone in the Hampshire Regional District who has that mentality of empowering students and stakeholders. I liked the way that he said we say we are professionals, but we don't always act professionally. And then he went on to talk about an example would be, teaching doctor in surgery, bringing in med students. I think that was what he talked about. I really liked that he talked about students want to know that you care about them, and respect is given when it's offered. Respect is given when it's offered to students and connecting with the students. I think that, that it's really important for a superintendent to connect in that way, not just with the students, but with the leadership team as well. I think that either way, both candidates would be really, really good here. I think that I really like that that Dr. Gosselin has regional experience, and I really like that Dr. Perrone has such an eclectic range of experience, and that he's from here and he understands this district. I'm not sure where I would lean right now. Yeah, Colin, did you say, I don't know that I was clear on where you stood, which candidate?
Leaning more towards the
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Williamsburg is done.
Next committee is Westhampton.
Okay, we're all here, so whoever wants to go first, I'd love to hear from you.
Quick, so I thought both candidates could do the job. I like them both. I thought that Vito would match the energy of our teachers. I thought that he would connect with them better. So I'm partial to Vito over the other.
I thought they're both really impressive candidates, and they're very, very different from each other. I thought that Dr. Gosselin seemed like somebody who I would see in an administrative role in a much larger capacity and not in our little district where I think there's a lot more hands-on and less theoretical work maybe than what he expressed interest with. By the same token, I thought that Vito didn't really answer questions. He kind of got lost in his focus, and I don't know whether that's indicative of just his high energy or whether that would be like an issue of him as a principal, as a superintendent. I did like when he said that he knew about all the openings and he had ideas about people he could bring in. And I think that given where the district is right now and the number of openings we have and the lack of leadership, I think somebody who's more local, who can bring a team in, and who seems like somebody who doesn't feel like all ideas flow from him, who seemed much more interested in empowering other people. So I think I'd be inclined to support him over Dr. Gosselin.
Good evening. I just have one concern with Mr. Gosselin. I felt sort of during his interview, one of the things he said a few times, I'll raise it up, sure. One of the things he said a few times in his interview was this would be a great step in his career. And looking at his track record of all the jobs that he's had, seems a bit job hoppy to me. And I think Vito might be a little bit more committed to the role rather than kind of us being a stepping stone in Mr. Goslin's career. And thank you.
Hello, this feels very awkward. I prefer our regular meetings. I feel like I should be talking to you more than other people. You're the committee. I feel like there was a big differentiator between the candidates, and I think not just the candidates, but the candidate that we need. And we need a candidate who is familiar with our district and who knows our district and has a track record of committing to a job and staying with that job, and has a track record of being able to work in difficult situations. And I know that Vito has an advantage over Mark in this, that he lives in Westhampton, but he also showed a deep familiarity with our district that most residents would not have. I didn't get the sense from Mark that he had very much familiarity with our district. I think, and also the tone of the two candidates, I felt like Vito had more of a tone that fits with our district, and Mark did not have a tone that fits with our district. Like, he may be more appropriate for a larger district. I'm also concerned about the employment history of Mark, that he was at Lennox for a year and a half, I believe, and left before his contract ended. He was in the district in Connecticut for a little less than a year, and he left before his contract ended. I know there may be extenuating circumstances that led to that, but we are not in a position where we can have another superintendent that doesn't stay for the length of time that we would like a superintendent to stay. We also need someone who's familiar with our district. As we know, we have peculiarities. And if you are not aware of those going into this job, you will not be successful and you will probably leave, which makes sense given our peculiarities. So I am strongly for Vito as a good candidate to bring us forward and build out central office and continue what he knows is the strong education in our elementary schools and in our high school.
I would echo a lot of what the four of you said. I think we need stability, and Vito said he has 6 to 8 years left in his career. He not only knows personally about our district, but I really appreciated that he seemed to have done his research talking about how he looked at the tiered focus monitoring reports for us and was already thinking about things, and he called them glows and grows, and he was thinking about both of them. And I just felt really excited about us moving in that direction. And he, I think, mentioned that he had some ideas of people who could maybe fill some of the openings in central office, and I think that's a huge value given where we are right now and the needs we have. And there was a lot of talk of empowerment and not being just him, but his team. But I do think I will say, I think we're very lucky to have seen both of these candidates because they're both very strong. And I'm just more concerned about the second candidate not staying with us long enough to see us through to a stable point.
Still have 5 minutes.
Is there anything anyone else wants to say?
One thing I would like to point out, is Vito's talk about the pathways programs that he oversaw. And someone that didn't go to college, I was in advanced manufacturing for about 8 years, and then I changed to IT, and I've been doing IT for about 7 years. And I find that alternative pathways for students like me who didn't want to go to college, I think is super important and very clever a way to do that. And the fact that he spoke about how the program sort of reached other kids, not just, the 5%, or 1% or whatever it is. So that was important to me.
Okay, I think that concludes Westhampton's time.
Okay. Next up is Southampton. Don't make Jennifer go first. There you go, okay.
That was her initiation.
Yeah.
Right, nice.
So I first want to comment about the process because I do understand the rationale behind asking both candidates the same set of questions. That makes it equal. It doesn't make it equitable for those of us who are trying to make this decision. There were 2 questions that I wanted to ask. One was how Vito, what lessons he took from the controversy in East Hampton. Now, he did in his cover letter mention that, which I thought that was great that he was willing to do that and address that head on. The question I wanted to ask Dr. Goslin was, why did you leave your last 2 jobs after 16 months and then about 11 months? We're not going to know the answer to that, and I share the concerns that people have here about Dr. Goslin's willingness to commit. So someone mentioned that he had regional experience. He did, 11 months worth. And that was at his last job, and he left that for personal reasons. Again, people have personal reasons, and so that's not a criticism of that. Lennox was about 1.5 years. There was a lot of turnover in Lennox during that time. There was a lot of issues they were having amongst their administrative staff. And so I wonder, can he deal with a rough and ready kind of situation as opposed to something very academic? He came across as very academic to me, which is near and dear to my heart, but I didn't see the willingness to really roll up his sleeves and get in. And my tell for that was the fact that none of his answers had anything to do with Hampshire Regional in terms of, well, I looked this up, and this is what I noticed, and I did some research here. And for someone who prides himself very clearly on his ability to research and his academic knowledge, that did not happen. And that concerns me, because that is the #1 thing you do going into an interview. And so he kind of lost me with some of that. That said, lots of experience, great. I think that Dr. Perrone is going to finish his career here. And that's what's important to me, as well as his experience, energy, connection to our communities.
I think I'd like to echo a lot of what's been said already, but I feel like I want to say it again anyway. I think these were both excellent candidates. I think Dr. Goslin obviously is a brilliant man. I think he'd be an excellent administrator for someone's district. I don't think it would be our district. I think he could easily take the reins of a large district, a financially strong district, a district that is doing great and only wants to do better. We heard about planetariums. We heard about TV studios. We heard about cross-district integration of special ed students, and that's great, but that's not a population issue that we're specifically dealing with here. What are we dealing with here? A business administrator who's working part-time and is leaving at the end of the year. An assistant superintendent who's gone. A superintendent who's gone. A special education director who's gone. None of that was addressed by Dr. Goslin. None of it. That is I think, fundamental to the role in this coming year, next 2 years, is going to be fixing those issues, addressing those issues. And as Margaret said, 11 months at School District 12 in Connecticut, which is over an hour away. Year and a half at Lenox, over an hour away. No local connections, no ties to the area. And there is no discussion about how those fundamental issues are going to be addressed. There's no discussion about how those fundamental issues are impacting our school today and what the fix for them will be. If we walk into this today with him, and he comes in and realizes, if he has not done his research and understands what exactly this district is, what's to say in 11 months from now, we are not right back in this room looking for another superintendent because Dr. Goslin decided there's a better opportunity for him, a better paying opportunity, an opportunity where he can use his incredible academic skills to elevate a larger district, and finds his way out there. Dr. Perrone's here. He lives here. There is nowhere for Dr. Perrone to run to. If he leaves, there is everyone, the people in this community, he has to look in the eye and explain to them why I promised I would come in and do my best and didn't. He would have to back out on every promise he's made and look at his community members, not just his employers as a school committee, his colleagues, his neighbors, his friends, and explain, well, I said I could do the job, but I didn't. He comes in with excitement. He comes in with great enthusiasm. He knows our district. I understand some of his examples weren't the best. They weren't on target. But what I thought was really fascinating, as much as we had this long conversation, these great anecdotes and this incredible storytelling and vibrant personality, he did bring it right back down into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, talking about his targeted goals, talking about what the data has shown. And even though he admits he's not the biggest data nerd, as he put it, he did demonstrate that he understands what the data means and how it needs to be used and how it needs to be brought to the teachers so that as a community we can fix that. He has the connections. He has the connections in the community to bring people in with him, to build a team in central office. He is coming into this position eyes wide open to exactly what it is. We have brought in multiple administrators from different districts who did not understand what this district needed, what was involved, what fiscal and administrative challenges we were facing, and look how that's worked out. We've lost all of them.
Thank you.
Some positions multiple
Thank you.
times.
We have 5 minutes left for 3 people. If there's more time at the end, don't.
It's okay, I won't take too long.
That's what he said.
First of all, I do think that we were really fortunate to have 2 really good candidates. So I am grateful for that, and I appreciate that both of them applied. I think that Dr. Goslin, I felt like a lot of his answers were more direct answers to the questions that were asked. However, in listening to the 2 candidates, Dr. Perrone was the one that had me thinking, gosh, I wish I was still a teacher. I think that Dr. Perrone has a really good sense of exactly who we are, and he wants to come here anyway. And I mean, and that matters to me. I think that we've had a lot of instability. We're still really unstable, and I am really concerned about Dr. Goslin's work history. And I'm afraid that he doesn't know us so well, and I'm afraid he will find out who we are and maybe think again about whether he wants to be here or not. I don't think Dr. Perrone will do that. So my vote would be for Dr. Perrone.
Thank you. Jennifer?
So this is kind of throwing me into the Shark Tank here because this is my first experience as well as some other people. I had the same kind of a feeling that Kim had. I wished I was still in high school and he was my principal, because that is the kind of experience I had from people where I went to school. I knew our superintendents. We knew all of our administrators. They were all in our school. We were with them. I don't know if that necessarily translates into being a good administrator and being a good superintendent, but like my other fellow members have said, though on paper I feel like Dr. Gosling looks really great, and he did give really good, concise answers to the questions, I don't know if that's what we need. I do think that we need someone who is going to bring a team together that can work together. As a parent prior to this and seeing all of this go on, I am shocked that this is how some school districts are run. So it's a big thing to take on. And I think maybe he is, like they said, ready to jump in and get ready and hit the ground running and fix what he can immediately and have a long-term plan for the goals in the future. So I would have to also go with Dr. Perone.
Okay. So I'd like both of them, and I think either one of them could do a good job for us. You know, I partially want to hire both of them and have Dr. Perone be the assistant superintendent so that he can jump in 18 months or 2 years to jump in. But, you know, I like them both a lot. I think Mark is going to be, he's going to be in the weeds on the details and provide support and all that. I think he's more of the, numbers. Let's look at this. Let's look at the data and see where that goes. I think Vito is more of. He's more of the sports model. I got smacked in the arm 8 times during the interview. Right. Like, make sure he sits next to Dylan during the meetings. So I like them both for different reasons. I think both of them would do well here. So hearing what the committee has to say, I'm fine with supporting the rest of the committee. So if there's no objection, our straw poll is going to be unanimous for veto. Right? Okay. And 1 minute, yield 1 minute back. So next, Chesterfield-Goshen.
Okay, Chesterfield-Goshen, if you don't mind coming up. I'd like to introduce 2 of our new members that we just received. One is Andrew Watt from Goshen, and the other is Kim Snape from Chesterfield.
Yeah, I'll go. All right. I agree with everybody. I think, I'm going to stand and look at you as well. I think we're really lucky to have both of them, and I liked them both for different reasons. I think on paper, Dr. Gosling checked off a lot of the boxes. I thought every answer he had was incredibly specific and echoed with a lot of clarity and calmness and a kind of a grounded way of answering the questions. It showed me his experience. However, I don't think that we are in an on-paper situation. I think that we're in life right now and we're in an extraordinary situation, and I think that Dr. Perone has the energy to tackle the current problems that we have. I found him to be impassioned. Collaboration is such an important word in so many areas, and I think he would inspire the people he worked with. I think he would inspire the students, and I think he would be excited. I think he is excited by the challenge that our district presents right now, and that he does have the benefit of knowing us and of being invested in the community, being part of the community, and wanting to improve our schools and the lives of everybody involved. So my vote is for, though I think they're both great, I could be happy with both of them, my vote is for Dr. Perone.
Thank you, Heather.
I'm not naive to Dr. Perone's charm that he had tonight, and I know that it was very captivating to listen to him, but I feel like I did see through a lot of it to some meaningful stuff under there. I don't think he's just a talker. I think he's very smart, and I think he's got great skill. I think personal skills and communication should be a part of effective leadership, and so I did see it as an asset. I think his skills with engagement is strong. I loved that his personal mission may be, what can I do to help? I made notes that he has experience working with current resources versus implementing new, which would be an asset to our schools and our staff. I thought that Dr. Gosling had great business sense. He was very pragmatic, but sometimes the trouble with quantifying success and looking at data, you become a bit detached and you spend a lot of time in the office reading, researching, and we need someone who's going to be engaged in our school community. I made multiple notes empowers educators when Dr. Perone was talking. I think that he's got great engagement with the teachers in the classroom. When Dr. Goslin was talking about his senior capstone project initiative that he had the seniors do, I would have liked to hear more details about how he implemented that or even presented it to the educators who were overseeing the students doing this work. And it looks great that he had an idea for a project like this, but what about the educators who were supervising student research time or checking drafts or looking over research proposals? Because I mean, that did inevitably have to fall on some of the classroom teachers. And it felt like Dr. Goslin maybe took a lot of ownership of that. And it should have been a collaborative effort with the students and the teachers as well who are part of that. I think that Dr. Perone brings a lot of community, local networking assets. I think he's got a lot of connections that he knows how to utilize that in our direct community that will be an asset to us. As the spouse of somebody who directly benefited from something like the Pathways program, and I live in Chesterfield, and I know a lot of people who have and will in the future, that's going to be an asset to our students. He definitely sounds like he does have a retirement trajectory at HRHS, and I also appreciated his proactive research on our Tier 1, 2, and 3 performance and needs. It showed a lot of investment, I think, in problem solving directly here and now. Thanks.
Your decision.
Veto Perone.
Thank you.
All right. I think a lot of people have sort of already said a lot of this, so I kind of echo what a lot of people said. I think Kim Shaw put it really well when she talked about people knowing us. We're a tough personality, right? Like, there's a lot of personality in this district, and I think that we're not necessarily an easy group of people to, I'd say, get along with or work with. So I think personality really does matter. And I just kind of felt like, even though it was very energetic for an interview, I felt like Vito's personality really jives with the district. I felt like the fact that he lives in this district gives a sense that he understands sort of the financial strains of small schools. So when we look at schools like Goshen and Chesterfield, Westhampton, really small schools that really struggle with being so small and the funding, I think that he has big ideas and would be able to understand and implement some really great things. I like that he has ideas for improving central office. He's coming into a sinking ship, and that doesn't scare him, so I think that's a really good sign. And I like that he's coming in from, kind of a fresh start perspective, and that he did his research and he talked about the tiered focusing. I like that he knew about us, whereas I felt like my concerns for Mark were around his employment stability. Hiring a superintendent is expensive and it's time consuming, and I think that I certainly don't want to be in this position in a year or in 16 months. It felt very sort of business-like. I felt like his answers were almost sort of robotic, and in some ways, I guess I felt like the examples were, in a sense, inflated. Again, on paper, I think he looks really well. I think in a much larger district, he could do really well, but I don't know that he is the right fit for our district, so my vote would be for Dr. Perone.
Thank you, Carla.
Rather than repeat everything that everybody else had said, I'm going to say that I did enjoy both of the candidates and what they had to say, but I think Dr. Perone is the more realistic fit for our very difficult community, number one. And number two, I really liked the way he started off by saying he was student-focused. And to me, that means a great deal, because that's who we're here for.
Thank you, Barb. Andrew?
My name is Andrew Watt, and I represent Goshen. Dr. Goslin was serious all the way through, and Dr. Perone was good-humored without being funny. And both of those things land differently with students depending on who they are. I'm relatively new to this part of the world, and to me, having a serious person who treats you seriously is important. Having somebody who violates your personal boundaries is bad. And people can pay the cost for that. He may plan on being here, and he may say, this is where I plan to be for the rest of my career. That has two meanings. I have a hard time with people who don't hold to their own personal boundaries, and I think it is dangerous for him. In terms of time, Dr. Gosselin used his time considerably more efficiently. He ended early, and whoever comes into this job is going to have to be a very good manager of time. Dr. Perrone went over on nearly every single question, and he answered all over the place. He used a lot of very good language in what he was describing, but I think he talked around a lot of issues in a great many ways. I think Dr. Gosselin is trying to be a much more serious candidate and is aware of some of the issues, but isn't in a position to address them as directly as Dr. Perrone. My vote is for Dr. Gosselin.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so I feel really fortunate that we had two candidates that make a decision difficult. That being said, I looked at some of the qualities and some of the things that both of these candidates said. Mark said has some regional experience. That excited me, but then we look a little closer at what that regional experience is. I know he's had a background with, a little bit all over the central office. That, made me feel like he knows a little bit about central office, and I felt pretty comfortable with that. Believes in reading and researching. I like that, but like as others said, maybe this is not a time that we need to be doing a lot of reading and researching. Instead, we need to be working with these teachers and collaborating. I enjoyed that he said spending needs should be based on education first. I think that's very important to me, but it was not something that Dr. Perrone did not say also. I think my biggest concern over is work history in terms of longevity. I really look at somebody that's going to come in here and be here long enough to right the ship and keep us moving along. And that can't be done in 1 or 2 years. And that's what my serious concern is. When I looked at Vito Perrone, I like that he lives close to the school. We haven't had that in a while. Somebody that if something goes wrong, he can be to the school in 8 minutes. I mean, that sounds really attractive. Familiar with our school system and our community. That's super important to me. Has local experience in other schools around us. Longevity, I like his longevity. It shows that, I really truly believe he would finish out his career here, which is very nice to hear. He said every decision is based on what's best for the students. And for me, that's one of the most important things. That's why we are all here. We wouldn't sit here all night long, once or twice a week if it wasn't for students. And that really hit home. I like that he used an example of his position at Easthampton going from level 3 to level 1. There's some performance standards there. He can meet those standards that we're going to put on him. Professional development is important. I think our teachers would really appreciate hearing that. Spending needs based on student needs, super important. Interested in bringing in central office staff. That is so important that he even mentioned it. He knew our deficits, he knew our issues, and he already thinks in his head that I have some people in mind or I need to get somebody in there because that's who he'll be working with. That makes me feel like he's going to take some ownership and get things righted. And one of the most important things to me was that students that are excelling should also be addressed and have their needs met. I think that for years, for decades, we've been looking at students that are finished early with their work or they're excelling in a class, and it's hard to recognize them because you're trying to bring the rest of the class to that standard. But I think that him saying that is very important to me, that everybody's individual needs, whatever they are, will be met. So that being said, I would go with Vito Perrone.
Okay, and that's time. It's 8:45, so if Hampshire Regional wants to take the remaining 15 minutes and reassess.
Okay. Hampshire, if you'd like to come up here, we have probably about 40 seconds each. Thank you. Does it?
Go first, 'cause I can be
Okay.
I already spoke for Chesterfield and Goshen, so again, same as before, my vote would be for Dr. Perone.
Hi, my name's Andy Hillenbrand. I'm brand new. I just want to say real quick first that I heard that this is going to be a really difficult group to work with, but I am nothing but impressed from hearing from all of you today, and I'm excited to be here, hearing all the different point of views and taking a stand that's not necessarily what other people are saying. I hear you and I see you. Without saying too much, my vote is for Dr. Perone. I would be excited to see what Dr. Gosselin could do if he stayed here. I was excited about a lot of his ideas. I was excited about his answering the questions head on with actual speaking to specific examples to the questions as opposed to a general idea of how, in theory, he would tackle the problems. But, and I think both candidates really spoke to student first. I heard that a lot from Dr. Gosselin along from Dr. Perone, student first. But what I heard from Dr. Perone that I did not hear from Dr. Gosselin is teachers first in a lot of situations. And I was a classroom teacher for 13 years first. And what I heard from Dr. Gosselin is there's problems with the school that I fixed. And I went to the students and I brought these plans in, and now the students are doing well. And I missed the part of where he was talking about the teachers and listing in there. And I heard from Dr. Perone that we have a lot of expertise already here, and we have lots of really good ideas from the teachers in the classrooms. And I think building a rapport with the teachers in this community, I don't know what the situation too intimately, but I'm getting the feeling that they're feeling a little bit detached of some of the work that's going on. And so that's mainly why my vote's for Dr. Perone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Crowther. I'm Williamsburg, but Hampshire Regional. So I just wanted to make one point, which it's Andy, right? I apologize. Andrew? Okay, sorry. I just wanted to sort of riff off of Andrew's point that has been sitting in my brain a little bit. First of all, my vote is for Dr. Perone, but the reason why his original offer was rescinded is because he decided to take up space that wasn't his to take up by using sort of like a very informal way to address a group of women that's not professional. I am a Mount Holyoke alum. My mom is a Smithy, so I'm a card-carrying seventh sister. But when, John, you were talking about being hit in the arm 8 times while he was talking, there was this overwhelming sense of like bro culture that I found to be simultaneously like, okay, fine, it is what it is, and then also a little bit jarring because we're not talking to one section of the population, we're talking to everybody, and I think that your behavior should sort of be reflective of that, and your presentation for the leadership of a district should be reflective of that. So the reason why I don't choose Dr. Gosselin is because he's in Simsbury. He has a record of jumping around. I do think that Dr. Perone is in a better position to lead us out of the mess that we are currently in. And I think that he would tap on all of the resources in the school committees to figure that out. So I would say Dr. Perone, but I would really like him to have some type of sensitivity or cultural training type of situation, I think. So.
I'd like to echo that. I actually found Dr. Perone's answers all over the place. He had a lot of edu-speak, but I found it sometimes difficult to parse out what he was actually saying. And I did feel concerned about the lack of professional decorum. I did see that in Dr. Gosselin, and I felt more confident listening to his answers. As a superintendent, it's more than bonhomie. There's a lot more to the job. I wish there had been some really focused questions on, managing personnel in central office and preparing budgets and all of that, because there's a lot of technical stuff that our district needs. Our district needs somebody to come into central office to really understand the financial picture, to have a good grasp of that, and to be able to make appropriate hires and all of that. That said, I did see the concerns about the job history, and for that reason, I mean, I guess I would feel okay going with Dr. Perrone, because I do think he would be here, and I do think he's vested in the community, and I would hope that when he actually, interviewing is a hard thing, and sometimes you come across differently than the way you really are, and so I find it really hard to tell from an interview, and but I think his commitment to the community might be able to overcome that.
Trish just teed it up perfectly for me. I think that anybody could have a good or bad interview. It's only an hour of their life, and it's very difficult to make such an important decision based on hearing from somebody for an hour, from forum questions and in a very hot room, et cetera. In this case, we're very fortunate. We don't have to make this decision based on just 1 hour with this candidate. I don't know about anybody else here, but I've been getting approached a great deal from the members of the community saying, please support Vito Perrone. He is our neighbor, he is our colleagues, his kids are going to school with our kids. We have a much more broader depth of experience with him as a person. He has a lot to live up to with us. We know him, so it's worth more to me than written resume letters of reference in a packet, or what he could say for 45 minutes. I believe our neighbors, I believe our community members. He has my support.
I'm the community member.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Hi, my name is Chris Overtree. I'm a Westhampton resident. I'm the community member to the search committee. I appreciate everything that's been said here. It was really valuable. My first comment is I wish we were selecting for more candidates, because it's a very clear choice given the two we have, but some of the issues that have been raised might be challenged and better understood with more candidates. I also understand there's a reality to the job market and the process and where our district is, so that is a process concern, not so much a practical concern. I work in school-based mental health across the Commonwealth with public schools, with a lot of superintendents. Dr. Gosselin is the kind of person I would imagine working with Boston Public Schools, which I'll just note are it's an impressively large district compared to Philadelphia. I don't know if it's actually smaller or bigger, but it is impressively large. And I could see him being the kind of person at that very high level writing grants and being really thoughtful about broad-based data. I don't see that translating well to the practical challenges here on the ground in a smaller district facing what it's facing right now. I also think the appetite for that kind of data-driven process, while it's close to my heart and what I would be doing in a position, it does not always translate well quickly to kind of learning the culture of a district, and that sometimes that kind of intellectual force can be what makes it hard for somebody to find a home in a region. Dr. Perrone, I understand some of the concerns that have been shared. I'm in favor of him. Maybe I would feel different if there were more candidates, perhaps. But I will say this, one of the exemplar districts that our statewide program works with is West Springfield. And he's known down there to be a very hard worker, and that district is considered to be an innovator in many of the ways that people are concerned that we might be able to do. So I see that as a huge asset in our favor. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the process.
I support Vito Perrone, and I really echo what everybody else had to say. I'm really not going to repeat anything.
So yeah, I was fascinated by the process, listening to Vito and then transitioning Mark. I was certainly captivated by Mark's capabilities. I thought that, he stood out in terms of his creativity, the depth of his experience. He'd shown longevity and previous experience in his previous districts in Pennsylvania, and I think would be very capable on the certainly on the business end. I think he's also very adaptive and would be a great leader here. I think that our difficulty, the notion of this being a difficult district is actually exaggerated. I've worked a lot in education and working around the country, and I've seen much worse. And in fact, I think there's a lot of I think we've got a lot of great qualities, and have had a stretch of bad luck in terms of the central office issues. But I see them both as really capable of addressing that. But because veto is local, and because we're not really clear about Mark's recent history, I'm inclined to lean towards veto, and I think that he would summon the energy. I think he's really, I think he could do it. I don't think we're short on thought leaders. I think there's a lot of depth there across the schools and amongst the faculties. So I'm leaning towards veto in that regard. I'd be delighted with both, but I think that the risk of having turnover again is something that would be extremely hard on the district.
So I'll just add to my previous comments. One is that when Dr. Gosselin talked, I heard a lot of I, and when Dr. Perone talked, I heard a lot of we. And I think that that's pretty important. The other thing is that a couple of people have mentioned kind of that exuberance that Dr. Perone has, whether that's bro culture or something else. So my husband, who is the antithesis of a bro, did work with him on a project related to pathways. And I also know women who have worked with Dr. Perone, and he does know how to code switch. I think he was excited tonight and interested and wanted to convey that. And that, again, it's an hour, as someone said, and so, we reflect back. And then we got a very different approach from candidate number 2, which I think emphasized negatively or positively the exuberance that Dr. Perone brought to the table. The last thing I would say, and this is kind of going on what Kim Schott said, is he knows our district, and not just from Googling us. He knows it because he's lived it. He lived it as a parent. He heard things from his kids. He heard things from teachers. And I think that's a valuable aspect to have in someone coming in to deal with some of the challenges we've had in central office. That's it.
I share many of the thoughts that people have expressed tonight. The one thing that maybe I think is a little bit different that I might be thinking about is that with the challenges in central office, we have a lot of people who have stepped up. This room is full of people who have stepped up because they want what's best for the children. And we want to move our district forward, and we want to move our school forward. But the consequence of that is it creates a lot of friction for us. And we're trying to each do what we think is best. What stood out to me was that Dr. Perone seems to be a shining star where he is catching all of our attention. And I think that that's one of the things that we really need. He's willing to bring in all these other people, but he can collect our attention and I think hopefully drive us forward with that shining star. He's someone that is bigger than any one of us, not just in stature, but I think so. I have a lot of hope and faith in his potential. And so for that reason, I'm supporting Dr. Prone.
9 o'clock on the dot. Very good, Thomas. That brings us to step 3 of the process. Each individual school committee shall now return to the ongoing joint committee meeting where a poll will be taken to hear the preferences of each individual school committee. The purpose of this is to determine whether we are already unanimous in our decision.
John, can I ask a question before we?
Absolutely.
So where are we in the process? Have references been checked? Have all of those sorts of things happened? Like, are we at a point where we're going to vote and offer the position tonight? Or are we going to vote and background check tonight?
I have not done any of the background check other than what the material that was available in the packet. I did not give any direction for that to happen. Did any other chair? Because I believe that would be part of the negotiations, and we wouldn't check that ahead of time, but.
So John,
Go
any
ahead.
vote that we did would be we would have to make it pending
Yeah.
those investigations.
Yeah, yep. So again, I'm just going by the ADC agreement that we have. Traditionally, when this has been done, we're not privy to all the conversations. I think we already know how we're split, but for the record, let's just report out the preference. Williamsburg?
Report out the straw poll that was just done.
Yep.
Williamsburg, the preference is Dr. Gosselin.
Westhampton?
Westhampton was veto.
Southampton? Southampton was Vito Pearl. Hampshire Regional?
Hampshire Regional is veto prone.
Chesterfield-Goshen?
Veto prone.
So the straw poll indicates that we're 5-4. Step 4, if all the school committees put forward. 4-1. Yeah, 4-1, that's right. It's getting late. If all the school committees put forward the same candidate, we're done. We didn't do that. We go to step 5. If the individual committees select differing candidates, discussions shall continue. In the joint committee meeting, the individual school committees will meet again in caucus in separate groups where the vote will be taken. So now it's going to be a vote, not a straw, to formalize it. It will be taken by all individual school committees regarding their preference for the superintendent. Each individual school committee shall return to the ongoing joint committee meeting where the votes of the school committee will be shared. So we did the straw poll. Now we got to go back through that, what we just did there, and the chair can figure out what they do, but the chair's got to come out of that group with a vote of something.
John, can you go through the full process?
Yeah, sure. So we've done the straw poll. Now we're going to do the official vote. If after we do the individual committee votes, we still do not have consensus by at least 4 of the individual school committees about approving the finalist candidate, the above process will continue. So if we end up coming back and it's a 3-2 vote, we continue. If we come back and it's a 4-1, we've concluded. If after all the individual committees vote out, only one individual committee has dissented to approving the finalist candidate, we will do the following process. So this is probably where we're heading with a 4-1. The all-district committee will post the meeting in accordance with the open meeting law to address the concerns of the dissenting individual committee. All individual school committee members from all school committees who are parties to this agreement will be invited to attend and participate in the discussion surrounding the finalist superintendent. After the all-district committee meeting, all individual school committees will reconvene together in a joint school committee meeting to execute a final vote. Posting of the meeting will be in accordance with the open meeting law. If only one individual school committee dissents in the final vote, the vote will pass, and the finalist superintendent will become the group's superintendent. If more than one individual school committee in the initial vote of the superintendent has voted against the selection of the finalist superintendent, then the vote fails, and the procedure set forth above shall not occur. In order to expedite the matter, all these meetings can happen in the same night, but they have to be 48 hours from today or by tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, Friday, so we'd be looking at a Monday meeting at the earliest.
And Hampshire's a meeting Monday, right?
Yes.
Tuesday, so yeah. Those are meeting
And just to make everybody aware that we had to, for tonight's meeting, we had to postpone our meeting, so we're looking for the next available date to get our meeting done.
And there's graduations.
Yes.
Right. And we're meeting Wednesday.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't think it's happening next week.
And
but-
graduation is Thursday, right?
So,
I think it's Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday?
So I'm not sure how this follows in the process, but I'm just wondering if the Williamsburg Committee would like to deliberate again after hearing everyone else's deliberations to see if the straw poll would have changed.
So
I think that's fair. You want to go in reverse order?
I think that's a really good idea, Marissa. Chesterfield-Goshen has opted to do that in the past when we were the dissenting vote, so.
So we'll go in reverse order. Hampshire Regional, you have 10 minutes at this point. Have a discussion if you want to have a discussion, or take, but you got to report out with a vote.
So Tom, do you need a motion? Are we voting, are we doing a motion type thing?
Correct. You have to exit this caucus with a vote, so I would suggest make a motion and then enter into debate, if there is any.
All right, so Tom, I'll move that we select Dr. Vito Perone for our next superintendent.
Do we need to make that pending the?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Pending verification of credentials and background and suitable contractual negotiations.
Yes.
yes, add that to that.
Sounds good.
We got a second?
I just read it right this time.
He's got more work to do than all of us.
Not over the past 3 days, he didn't.
No, John, I'll give you that.
Okay, so we have a move to approve Vito Perone as superintendent pending verification of contractual information. Was moved by Trish and seconded by Colin. Is there any discussion?
Point of order, does that motion have to be the same from each committee?
No, no, it does not. I would, the extra stuff we added in, yes, I would put that in. But if you pick a different candidate, or you could make a motion to take no action.
So just one thing, Tom, on the wording, I think it was verification of credentials and, what was the rest of it, John?
Background.
Background check.
Credentials, Corey, and then successful contractual
And successful
negotiations.
Contractual negotiations.
Okay, so it's a move to approve Vito Perone as superintendent pending verification of credentials, query, and successful contractual negotiations. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor, raise your hand from Hampshire Regional. Opposed? The motion carries.
Chesterfield-Goshen?
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve Vito Perone as our next superintendent, pending all of that stuff we talked about.
Thank you, Carl. Same motion. Who seconded that? Thank you, Heather. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Thank you. Unanimous.
Southampton?
Move to appoint Dr. Vito Perone as our next superintendent, subject to credential checks, background check, and successful contract negotiations.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Westhampton.
Same motion?
Thank you. Motion by Scott,
Second?
seconded by Peter. Any discussion? Okay, raise your hand. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously.
Williamsburg?
So can I say something? We went through that really quickly. Marissa, I know 10 minutes is, since you're the dissenting vote, is a little amount of time. I don't think we really need to be critical on that time.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I move to suspend the time.
Yeah. Williamsburg, would you like to re-deliberate, or would you like to just go ahead with a motion?
we should redeliberate.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to start.
Please do.
So when we did our straw poll, I said I wasn't sure which way I was leaning. After hearing all the other school committees deliberate, my vote would be for Vito Perrone for many of the reasons that a lot of people stated. I wrote down a few things as I was listening to them. To Kim's point of Dr. Perrone made her wish that she was still a teacher, he made me wish that my term wasn't ending. I think it's really important that teachers are, it's important that, that a superintendent makes their teachers want to be here. And especially for our district, I think that's really important for the teachers to like their superintendent. The other thing I wrote is, when I think about all the people I know who have graduated from here, and when I think about my kids being in this district and moving through this district and eventually coming to this high school, I think Dr. Perrone is a better fit for this community. And the other thing I said, actually I kind of already said it, I want principals and teachers to be happy, and I think that Dr. Perrone is the one to do that.
As I said before, I was torn, and I think that, you know, a lot of wise people who I respect have spoken in favor of Dr. Vito Perrone, and I'm swayed in that direction in part because I would like to see consensus here. But I also think he would be a good candidate. I think he would fit. I think his connection to the community is valued and important and should not be overlooked. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Colin.
Should I go to the?
Yes, please.
I was not charmed by him, so I don't share that feeling that I've heard over and over again. Dr. Perrone, the thing that's tough, while I don't want to change my vote, nobody wants to have another meeting and go through this. It sounds like we may end up with, 4 committees in consensus, and maybe we're still the dissenting vote, in which case it would be veto anyway. So I just feel kind of stuck. Like, I don't want to slow the process down. I don't want to add another meeting. I don't want to keep everybody here till midnight. So I guess, yeah, what I think is unfortunate, I actually even had a chance to review the questions. I think we should have asked a question about hiring and staffing and dealing with central office. Like, the fact that Vito happened to mention that and the other candidate didn't, I think it's just like too bad. Doesn't mean that he couldn't, that the other candidate couldn't help us in that way or doesn't understand or couldn't understand. And similarly, I don't know that I understand that, like, looking at somebody's job history can give you a sense of whether or not they can commit. I also think we haven't gotten a chance to ask him about what happened in his job history. So I don't know that it's fair to assume that he would not, that Mark would not stay. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, to me, the choice is still like very obvious. I heard everything that everybody said. I understand that people have relationships with this guy. I don't have a relationship with him. It doesn't make me excited to go back to teach. Like, there's nothing about his like charisma that really moves me or inspires me. It made me feel just like, I was at like the Vito show, and that like doesn't work for me. Like, that thing that some men do just like it didn't work for me. But I'm not gonna be the rock in the road, like, this is a large group of people. Lots of you have been here longer than I have been. You have perspectives I don't have. If people know this guy and they like him, like, let's give him a whirl, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know that I'm changing my vote. I feel really stuck. My values, my intuition tells me like he's not the guy, but I've heard a lot of people say that he is. So I don't want to stand in the way of us like making a decision that really needs to be made. That's where I'm at.
Unfortunately, I need more time to think about all that's happened in order for me to process a really clear answer. That's difficult for me. But I will tell you one thing, and I think I said this at the end of my first presentation, is that I will accept whichever way the chips fall. And as Nicole stated, there's no way that I want to be obstructive in this process. And I understand the importance of getting someone in that position and moving forward. I regret that we have to make such a critical decision on such short notice with so little time to really drill, I don't want to say drill because that's not fair, but to really ask some deeper questions, and I think people had them here. Why did you leave your jobs, Dr. Goslin? You know, I'm not sure what we would ask Dr. Perrone, but there is more that we could learn that would help all of us. At least it would help me and perhaps some of my school committee members make a better informed decision. That said, as I said earlier, I will not stand in the way of making sure that we can bring this school system together and create a central office that functions and people will stay in that position. And if the majority feels that Dr. Perrone is that person, then I will support that.
So I would echo a lot of what Nicole brought to the microphone. Every instinct I have says that Dr. Perrone is not the man for this district. That said, I was not born and raised here. My work history is not here. I don't know him. I don't know his kids. And I respect that a lot of you do. And that is swaying for me. Where I guess it comes down for me is I'm on the search committee. And in those early search committee meetings, we had really hoped to create a process that would begin to heal the community based on some of the things that have happened this year, and bring the community voice into the search committee, have as much input from parent groups and student groups and teacher groups and every group as we could. Have candidates here to spend days and talk to people and have a real process. I mean, that was the ideal going into this. And I understand times change. I understand we're under some pressure to get somebody in and to move on, and I feel that too. I'm tired of going to meetings. I want the best for the district. And I hear what everybody who has a long history here is saying, and I respect that. And I hope that I get to vote last, because I really don't want to change my vote, because it breaks my heart to do so, because I think this is a really wrong decision. But if I have to, I will. And the only reason I would really do that is I know that the high school principal is very much in support of him and really wants very much to work with him, and making both principals that I'm in touch with happy is important to me. That said, I've heard a lot from people tonight about if I had met him while I was still teaching, I would have stayed teaching. If I knew before I decided not to run for another term and potentially put me in charge of that school committee, that I would stay on, I would vote for him in a second. But if I were still teaching or a principal in this district, I would be looking for another job, because I have seen what charismatic leaders do. And I think he's one of those.
Thank you, Glenda. Anyone else want to? Earlier, we heard from a community member who was on the screening committee. Principal Jenkins was on the screening committee as well, and I was wondering if she wanted to, since she's here and was on the screening committee, if that would be.
I think right now this is your meeting, so it's the chair's discretion.
Is that something you'd like to do, Stacy? You don't have to. I'm just asking since you're here.
It's not me putting you on the spot this time.
I came back, I changed back into my work clothes and came back, so it's my own fault. I didn't hear, I was driving while some things were maybe being said, so I don't know that I heard everything that got said, but I heard some of the things that were said as I just came in, and I understand that, and I feel similarly that I wish this were a different process. I wish we weren't in this position, but we are, and we're here. And I am ready to move on, and I am ready to work and be excited about working. And there was one candidate tonight that made me feel excited about working again. And I understand, you know, I live in Westhampton, I work in Williamsburg. I understand the worry about charisma. I totally understand that. That's, I'm not surprised that my school community feels that way, may feel that way. But I feel like we need some excitement and charisma right now. And I feel like we have a solid enough school community that I'm not worried about that negatively impacting the good work that's happening at our school. But given the two options that we saw tonight, I'm ready for some excitement and some enthusiasm.
Thank you very much, Stacy, and sorry to put you on the spot. Any other deliberation? Does anyone want to make a motion? Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's for the individual committees. It's the majority.
I'd like to make a motion, as the other committees did, to accept Vito Broom with all of the caveats that were previously said. Colin Black, Williamsburg.
So a motion has been made by Colin for the same motion that was presented by other committees. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Who was that?
Kath. Wow.
Seconded by Kath. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 3.
Yep.
All those opposed? Passes 3-2.
Okay, so that concludes that round, and the results are all 5 committees endorsed Vito Perrone for superintendent. We don't need to continue on with steps 5 through 9D. So the next, at this point, the ADC committee will come back into play, and which makes Don the chair. I would make a motion for the ADC that we now adjourn to executive session for the purposes of preparing to negotiate a contract with Vito Perrone for our next superintendent, and we will not return to public session for any votes, and that all the committee, non-ADC committee members join us in executive session.
I will second that. I'd like to say one thing quickly before everybody does leave. I just want to say that thank you, everybody, for being part of this. I mean, it really takes a lot of people being here all night, but a special thanks to John for organizing this. I know this was a tremendous amount of work. And Colin, thank you for all the setup, because it really helps our community.
And also, don't forget, I need those packets back.
Yeah.
After, we got to vote it though, right?
Yep.
You're the, Everybody. There will be votes within the committee, but they're not going to be reported out. So.
Does she think she'll be helpful?
No. Liz, do you have the ability to join us in executive session? I'll modify my motion to invite Liz LaFond of the MASC. I just said it.
Thank you. Right. And then we're supposed to vote in by name.
Right, so first ADC, and then each committee has to go by roll call. Lumbra, aye. ADC members.
Marissa and I, aye.
Don Willard, aye.
Heather Crocker-Allenbach, aye.
John Doe, aye. Peter Clary, yes.
Cresco, aye.
Southampton, same motion, made by Dylan, seconded by Margaret. Roll call. Margaret? Jennifer?
Johnson, aye.
Lumbra, aye. Passes.
Chesterfield-Goshen?
Make the motion right.
Yeah.
Same motion.
Okay, Heather?
Aye.
Carla?
Watt, aye.
Carla?
Same, aye.
Oh, Kim, yeah. Barb? Don Willard, aye.
Hampshire Regional, Trish, did you make a motion?
Yeah, I made a motion.
Peter, did you second it?
Yes.
All right. Wait, I gotta put something here. Bach?
Aye.
Colson Montgomery?
Aye.
Raymond?
Aye.
Barkham?
Aye.
Larson?
Yes.
Okay. Thibodeau?
Aye.
Hillenbrand?
Aye.
Peter?
Yes.
Black?
Black eye.
Cresto?
Aye.
Childs?
Aye.
Crowther?
Aye.
Thompson? All right, motion carries.
Same motion, Westhampton. Second.
Peter, second. Roll call?
Yes.
Lennon, aye.
Peter, yes. Sorry. Clark, aye. John Doe, aye.
Marla Clary, aye.
Williamsburg? Motion, okay, moved by Nicole, seconded by Kath. Roll call vote, Nicole?
Emerson, aye. Cresco, aye.
Black eye.
Marissa and I, aye.
Time is 9:29, meetings in executive session. 2-minute break.